how NVIDIA and OpenAI fuel the AI money machine.
I believe the AI industry is in a very big bubble.
We are in an AI bubble.
Is it a bubble?
I mean, I think it's quite possible.
Demand destruction, as I mentioned, is already happening with laptops, mobile phones. उसमें दिख रहा है. If you look at it from a top-down standpoint, all the signs of a bubble are there. Leverage trading हो रहा है. Loan लेके SK Hynix, Samsung खरीद रहे हैं. 700 billion is one of the biggest capex numbers on a single theme that we have seen in the US. So all the top-down signs are very, very strong, and we have already seen Kospi, which is the Korean stock market.
स्वानंद केलकर, जिनके पास स्टॉक मार्केट का 26 साल का एक्सपीरियंस है, आज हमारे साथ है. हमने डिस्कस किया कि एआई सच में बबल है या नहीं, कुछ ऐसे डेटा के साथ जो आपको शॉक कर देगा.
You were the managing director of Morgan Stanley India. उसके अलावा you are the co-founder and managing partner of Breakout Capital, where you advised $1.7 billion.
Government is spending more on investments. You buy or you tend to go towards a company like Larsen. And when it is spending more on consumption, you tend to go towards a company like Hindustan Lever, because the government is telling you that is the thrust of where I want to spend the money.
Top 3 या top 5 countries अभी कौन से हो रहे हैं आपके emerging markets में basis this?
If you think about emerging markets as a whole, there are 4 big countries, right? Korea, Taiwan, China, and India. TSMC stands for Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, which is one of the largest chip manufacturing companies in the world to manufacture these chips. And you'll be surprised that 55%, if not more, of Taiwanese index is TSMC.
Oh my God, one company, 55%.
Yeah. So when somebody tells me I'm a Taiwan fund manager, I'm like, haha, you're a TSMC fund manager.
Original 2.5 lakh that you had invested, it became over. Can you help our audience understand कि जब आपने चोलामंडलम में इन्वेस्ट किया, तब क्या देखा वो कंपनी में and कैसे इतना CAGR बनाया आपने?
And in Chennai, the Murugappa group then used to be.
India is currently the fastest growing large economy in the world, and if you want to take real benefit of this growth story, investing in Indian businesses and companies is non-negotiable. Whether you're already investing in markets or just starting your investing journey, Grow is one of the platforms to do it. Grow's interface is very clean and intuitive. Here you can trade stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, IPOs, bonds, even commodities, all from one app. Portfolio tracking is also very structured. You can see performance, understand sector allocation, and get a complete breakdown of your investments in just a few tabs. And because of this simplicity and trust, Grow has become India's largest stockbroker today. Check out the Grow app today for more details and stay tuned for this entire episode of Conversation with Kushal.
तो मैंने आपके बारे में पढ़ा, you were the managing director of Morgan Stanley India. उसके अलावा you are the co-founder and managing partner of Breakout Capital, where you advised $1.7 billion, which is like huge itself. And आप भी CEO, and वो common है हम दोनों के बीच में, and आपने MBA किया है from IIM अहमदाबाद. कितने साल हो गए आपको स्टॉक मार्केट्स में करियर बनाते हुए?
So पहला स्टॉक खरीदा, फर्स्ट एग्जांपल इज ईयर 2000. हाँ, वो शून्य हो गया, तो एंड ऑफ डेज प्ले. तो देन आई सेड ये थोड़ा भी सीख के करते हैं, राइट? ये टिप विप तो नहीं जम रहा है अपने को, तो नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, तो थोड़ा समझते हैं. एंड द गुड पार्ट देयर वाज दैट parallelly I was doing my articleship, which meant that I was also studying about company balance sheets. I was studying about how companies make money, how businesses run, बैलेंस शीट क्या होती है, वर्किंग कैपिटल क्यों इतना इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, कैश फ्लो कैसे बनाते हैं. सो दैट ग्राउंडिंग वाज हैपनिंग पैरेलली. अभी भी स्टॉक प्राइसेस के बारे में बहुत ज़्यादा मालूम नहीं है, बहुत ज़्यादा रिसोर्सेज भी नहीं है, एलएलएम तो दूर की बात है, गूगल भी नहीं कर रहे हैं उतना. देयर इज बी वन वेबसाइट आई रिमेंबर कॉल्ड इक्विटी मास्टर या ऐसा कुछ नाम होता था उसका, वेरी मिनी ओल्ड डेज, माइट बी रॉन्ग अबाउट इट, ऐसा कुछ नाम था. सो थोड़ा बहुत वहाँ से समझ के सीख के कर रहे हैं. आई बॉट द नेक्स्ट स्टॉक इन 2003 व्हेन आई वाज इन बी स्कूल. सो 2000 और 2003 के बीच में आई जस्ट सेड नॉट टचिंग द मार्केट, लर्निंग दिस, अंडरस्टैंडिंग दिस. एंड एमबीए में भी कोर्सेस उसी अलाइनमेंट से चुने मैंने कि विच हेल्प मी इन दिस पार्ट ऑफ इट. In 2005, when I graduated, I joined Fidelity from campus. And from then till now, which is 2026, so 21 years, I've always been a buy-side investor. So I have worked in 4 places, which is Fidelity, HSBC, Morgan Stanley for the longest. I was in Morgan Stanley for 14 years. And then Breakout Capital, which I co-founded with my colleague at Morgan Stanley, Ruchir Sharma. So that has been the 26-year journey. Always been a buy-side institutional investor. In personal capacity, I've kept investing all through this. But I mean, you know this, I mean, you've spoken to, अगर आप कोई भी institutional investor से बात करोगे, your primary focus is your portfolio which you're running for your client. and has to be that way. So in that pursuit, your personal investing is sometimes neglected, and so be it. But I think I have also kept investing personally at different points in time, because this curiosity is not a 9 to 5 curiosity, right? If you are consumed by this animal, it's a 24/7 365 thing. So ऐसा नहीं है कि 9 से 5 हो गया काम घर चलो. And I think that has kept still alive. I keep checking it periodically. Is that burning still alive? But long answer to your short question. Personally investing for 26 years, professionally investing for 21 years. I think that's
Lovely.
the-
एंड इसमें आपने बताया कि फिर देन यू लर्नड एंड देन यू स्टार्टेड योर इन्वेस्टिंग जर्नी अगेन आर्टिकलशिप से आपने वो लॉसेस के बारे में लाइक वो एक्सपीरियंस किया एंड देन सीखना शुरू कर दिया एंड देन आपने बताया कि आपने फिर एक बी स्कूल के बाद लाइक वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट स्टॉक्स यू इन्वेस्टेड इन आई वांट टू टेक यू टू वन केस स्टडी जो आपकी बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है कि आपने चोलामंडलम आइडेंटिफाई किया था एंड you basically the original 2.5 lakh that you had invested, it became over 46 lakh, which was like a CAGR of over 33%. तो ये इसका बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी है कि यू वेंट टू मीट अनदर कंपनी एंड देन आपने ऑल ऑफ अ सडन देखा कि चलो ये कंपनी को भी मिल सकते हैं एंड देन आपने एक स्लाइड उनकी जो थी विच लाइक देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम स्पेंट ऑन वन सिंगल स्लाइड कन्विंस्ड यू टू इन्वेस्ट इन दैट कंपनी. सो कैन यू हेल्प आवर ऑडियंस अंडरस्टैंड कि जब आपने चोलामंडलम में इन्वेस्ट किया तब क्या देखा वो कंपनी में एंड कैसे इतना कैगर बनाया आपने?
Fantastic. So I think पहले disclaimer देता हूँ. Let's talk about a stock. It's a personal view. This is not a recommendation. Please do your own research before doing anything. But I'll tell you the Chola story, right? And I remember this very distinctly. So in Chennai, the Murugappa group then used to be housed in a building called the Dare House. And all the Murugappa group companies were on different floors. So I had gone there to meet a different Murugappa group company, Carborundum. It was either Carborundum or Coromandel, one of the two, which was a much larger company than what Chola was. एंड एक फिलर मीटिंग चाहिए था. मतलब एक मीटिंग मेरी 11 से 12 है, दूसरी मीटिंग मेरी 3 से 4 है. बीच में क्या करूँ, मतलब कहाँ जाऊँ, क्या करूँ? तो मैं माइट एज़ वेल मीट समबडी हू इज़ देयर इन दैट बिल्डिंग. एंड दिस आई वाज़ डूइंग इन प्रोफेशनली. सो आई वाज़ ऑलरेडी एट मॉर्गन स्टैनली बाय देन. ये 2011 की बात है ये. So I wanted this filler meeting, and I requested whoever was organizing the meetings for us, can I meet Chola Finance as well in the same building? And the CEO then, who was S. Velayan, of course, I had never met him before. I had not heard a lot. He had just come back from the US at that point in time, and they used to have a JV, DBS Chola, at that point in time. And that had gone through a cycle of credit card losses. They used to have a mutual fund business, which they had since sold off. There used to be a DBS mutual fund, etc. And there were a lot of losses in that credit card business after the great financial crisis. So you would be surprised that a stock that routinely trades at 4 times price to book now was trading at book. It was like at one time book. So ये filler meeting था. I hadn't gone prepared or anything of that sort. I said, Mr. Velayan, thank you for your time. Thank you for the meeting. कैन यू ऑल्सो गेट मी सम लंच, क्योंकि अभी 1 बजे का मीटिंग है. तो बोला हाँ, लेट्स गो टू आवर ईटिंग एरिया. एंड हम लोग ने कर्ड राइस खाया उधर. सो आई टॉक अबाउट व्हाट हैपेंड इन दैट मीटिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ द बिजनेस, बट सम ऑफ दीस, so as investors now, what we have become good at is going to our office and picking up the vibe, right? We have become very good at it, क्योंकि हम ये बहुत करते हैं. एंड यू गेट टू नो कि एनर्जी है ये ऑफिस में, एनर्जी नहीं है आपके ऑफिस में. मैं इधर आया, आई कैन सेंस द एनर्जी. दिस यंग 21 22 year old kids who are like at it, you can feel the energy. You go to a dead office somewhere, you will feel it in a second कि भाई यहाँ कुछ ज़्यादा हो नहीं रहा है. मतलब लोग 9 to 5 टाइप लोग हैं, तो वो कर रहे काम, जा रहे घर पे. So in that Chola office, I went in. I saw that the CEO, who's also the part of the promoter family, is sitting in an open office. That is not have a cabin fancy, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. It's an open cabin. And he was sitting on a Swiss ball. He didn't have a chair.
Swiss ball.
Swiss ball जो एक exercise ball होता है, जो
okay.
बड़ा सा, it keeps your posture straight. If you sit on a Swiss ball, you will not slouch. You will always
अच्छा.
sit up straight. And he talked about the most intricate details of the company in terms of losses कितने हैं, क्या करना है, क्या हुए, कैसे हुए, क्यों हुए, गलतियाँ क्या हुई, in an open cabin. So anybody who's sitting there or anybody who's sitting here can hear it and what he's saying. This is the CEO of the company talking about and being absolutely candid. And I thought that this transparency, right, which comes right from the top, clear communication, transparency, and then the slide that you mentioned, जो एक slide उन्होंने दिखाई this is the part of the market that we want to focus on. I thought that clarity struck me, right? So, दो चीज कि new young CEO wants to do something, is very open, very clear about what he wants to do, has a strategy which is charted out. But at that point in time, this was मेरा एक rule था कि 2 quarter देखूंगा even before I am impressed. Yeah, that's exactly.
This was the slide, right?
That's exactly the slide.
Yeah.
This is the June 2011 investor presentation, and the red triangle within that triangle is where they said we want to position ourselves in.
तो ये vehicle financing में जा रहे थे
This
तब.
is vehicle financing. अगर आप सबसे नीचे देखो, there are first time users, small ticket operators, and then at the top are the large vehicle operators who have more than 50 vehicles, then the large, medium, and then we said they said that there is heavy commercial, light commercial vehicle. We want to capture a bigger part of the light commercial vehicle, and then maybe get to the first time owners, because ऊपर competition बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. जिसके पास 50 vehicles का fleet है, उसको finance करने के लिए बहुत लोग रहते हैं.
अच्छा.
Because every bank wants to finance somebody like a large courier company or a large logistics company. आप समझो आज की तारीख में delivery सोच लो या VRL logistics सोच लो. उनके पास 50, 100, 200 ट्रक का फ्लीट है. उनको फिनेंस करने के लिए ICICI बैंक से लेके नीचे तक सब लोग कर रहे हैं. But it is at the bottom where there is not enough financing available, and that's where the margins are bigger as well. So then they talked about the youth CV business, the new CV business, etc. So I thought this, even within a small subsector of automobiles, they had thought of their positioning very clear. So I think वो जो आप triangles का legend देखोगे वहाँ पे CV industry and Chola positioning. I think that their positioning that they wanted there was very clear. So I was impressed by this. But I also said, impressive बातें करने वाले CEO बहुत होते हैं. Let's track what this person has said versus what he is delivering. तो actually ये मिलने के बाद मैंने 2 quarter इसको track किया कि ये जो बोला वो हो रहा है क्या, is it moving in the right direction? And once I felt convinced, I bought the stock. I bought this personally. I bought it personally because you'll be, again, there's a story there. We used to have a market cap cutoff in terms of what should be the minimum market cap for a stock to get into the institutional portfolio. Chola at that point in time was below that cutoff. तो वो छोटा stock था. It was like a small cap stock. And that's how I bought the stock personally, saying that, hey, listen, the 2, 3, 4 things that I want to see, I'm seeing. Valuation seem to be on my side. The group has an impeccable reputation and track record. And this seems to be a company within that group under a very young, I thought, who was a very dynamic, I'm still in touch with the Lion CEO, and I own the stock. So that part is done. अभी आपने जो CAGR बोला, I added to that stock later, it's the largest position in my, वो सब ठीक है. But I have also learned how to analyze a financials company through my ownership of Chola now for 15, 16 years, right? So the line that I have used in that article is that I think it's the pursuit of Goddess Saraswati which blesses you with the fruits of Goddess Lakshmi. If you start the other way around, right, it's typically not a good way. So I always feel like I'm a student. I want to learn. मुझे समझना है. So जैसे on the financial side, if I were to say it in just one sentence, right, you tend to look at any lending or balance sheet based financial company, उसको 2 axis पे देखना होता है. One is growth and second is profitability, right? इसमें कोई rocket science नहीं है. In fact, in a NBFC or in a bank, I think excessive growth is a red flag, right? Because it generally tells you that there are going to be problems in the future.
तो आप बोल रहे हो excessive growth अगर कोई बैंक में हुआ तो that is not good.
That is not a good sign. That is because the ability to absorb credit in an economy is limited.
And when you say growth, this is basically loan growth.
Loan growth.
Okay.
Loan growth, right? If somebody is, let's say, growing their loan book at 50, 60%, छोटी company है, can grow. But if they're going 50, 60% year on year, right? As famously the Bajaj Finance CEO Rajiv Jain says that your money in the lending business is your ability to collect the last 2 EMIs. राइट, जो 60 EMI है, 24 EMI है, 48 EMI है, आपका जो पैसा बनेगा, जो निम बनेगा, वो लास्ट 2 EMI में है. So you have to be able to lend to somebody who you are sure is going to pay you 48 EMIs. Right? As a bank, lending करने में कोई heroism नहीं है. Lend आप भी कर सकते हैं, lend मैं भी कर सकता हूँ. पैसा लेके जाना है, कौन नहीं चाहेगा. It's your ability to assess the risk. It's your ability to assess कि ये आदमी 48 EMIs टाइम पे बिना कोई फॉलो अप के पे करेगा क्या, एंड देन लेंड टू हिम एट द अप्रोप्रिएट प्राइस. आई थिंक दैट इज द की. सो ग्रोथ इज वन पार्ट. सो ग्रोथ का एक, आई फील देयर इज अ गोल्डन मिडल फॉर ग्रोथ इन टर्म्स ऑफ बहुत ही स्लो ग्रोइंग है, यू डोंट वांट इट. बहुत ही फास्ट ग्रोइंग है, you don't want it. You want something in the middle. Also, I feel when it comes to a lending institution, I feel age is an advantage. In lot of the new disruption categories, right? जैसे आप consumer internet ले लो, वहाँ पे if the founder is young, I think it's an advantage. In an NBFC, if in a bank, if the bank at the NBFC had seen cycles, right? कि have seen a bad asset quality cycle, had seen other problems, etc. I think that is an advantage because these businesses become better with age. They become better with survivorship. इन इंडिया आप देखोगे एनबीएफसीज का एक साइकिल आता है इन अ क्लच ऑफ 4 5 years लॉट ऑफ एनबीएफसीज कम अप एंड देन दे डिसअपियर ओवर टाइम so in a bank, in an insurance company, because insurance company again you need to know the track record of how well you are underwriting, right? I mean, if you have mispriced your insurance, you will end up with losses too soon. So having history, having pedigree in an NBFC or a bank or an insurance company, I think is very important for me, which is on the other side in some of the newer age businesses, right? For instance, I was speaking to, I won't name the company, where he said that our median age of our customer is 30 years. And I saw everybody in the top management, the median age there was 55, 56. Right? Now, the purana company hai, wo kuch new age product बेच रहे हैं. So I asked them, how do you fill this communication gap? Right? मुझे मालूम नहीं है. I'm in my 40s. What the 25-year-old really wants, I have no idea. I don't have kids, so I really don't have that conversation. And this is no, we institute surveys and we speak and we figure out. And I said, this is a category where you need a young founder who's from that cohort of the consumers. This is not an old man's game. So even within companies, right, there is an old companies game and there's a young companies game. You need to figure out which companies, which sectors fall where. Coming back to Chola, so I think growth versus profitability was a metric. I won't go into too much details of it, but that is something that I developed while analyzing every quarterly numbers for Chola, and then I've kept on holding to the stock. So the other advantage with Chola has been the time spent in analyzing or keeping it or updating it is probably half an hour every quarter. I don't need more than that.
That's it.
I just
Half
look
an
at the
hour.
presentation. I just see the growth. Metric मालूम है मुझे क्या देखना है. I look at the growth. I look at profitability. And profitability has three vectors. One comes from growth. Then it comes from net interest margin. Comes from the cost line. And then it comes from asset quality. So ये तीनों का ऐसा sine wave होता है. So it just goes up and down. And I think if you get your fix on where these things are, I think that just helps you understand these things better.
And you also say that आपका investing style is also similar to what Warren Buffett calls lethargy bordering on sloth. So what exactly is lethargy bordering on sloth? Can you explain to our audience?
So I'll explain the term. Like lethargy is alas.
Yeah.
Sloth is actually an animal who is supposed to be very lazy. So it is like extremely lazy. जैसे मैंने चोला के बारे में बताया, right? I mean, I owned the stock right for 15-16 years now, and I spend half an hour every quarter. तो ये lethargy बोल सकते हो आप कि ये कुछ there is no activity happening. बहुत analyze कर रहा है, ये कर रहा है, वो कर रहा है, ऐसा सब कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. Sometimes people confuse it with buy and hold, but I interpret it slightly differently. I interpret it that don't fix something which is not broken. जो आपने इनिशियल रैशनल लिखा है कि मुझे ये ग्रोथ ट्रेजेक्टरी, ये प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी ट्रेजेक्टरी, इसका ये ड्राइवर्स, इफ इट इज ब्रॉडली मूविंग इन दैट डायरेक्शन, डोंट डू इन्स एंड आउट्स फॉर स्मॉल पीरियड्स ऑफ टाइम. सो लेथार्जी बॉर्डरिंग ऑन स्लॉथ इज बेसिकली नॉट टू डू अ लॉट. जैसे हमारे पोर्टफोलियोज में भी हमारा टर्नओवर रेशियो बहुत कम है. वी डू नॉट बाय एंड सेल स्टॉक्स लाइक every 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. We buy stocks, we write a rationale when we typically buy a stock. We monitor the rationale, and if the rationale is broadly playing out the way we thought it will play out, हम लोग कुछ नहीं करते. So it might feel कि ये है भी लोग जिंदा इसके पीछे, ये पोर्टफोलियो के पीछे कि नहीं है. But we are there, but we are just tracking things versus what we thought will happen. And if the outcome is largely in your favor, then we don't do much. So that is the genesis of that term. And I really liked it when Buffett used it. Because even Buffett has owned stocks for decades, right? He just owned the same stocks for a very, very long period of time. But this is not a buy and forget.
Do you recommend this strategy to young investors who are watching this? हमें भी ऐसे करना चाहिए?
It's a question which I cannot answer in a clean yes and no.
Okay.
So instead of buy and hold, I would say it's buy and monitor. And if required, act, either sell, add, whatever it is. Sometimes you do activity for activity's sake, right? You just buy, sell things because somebody told you something, कुछ टीवी पे सुन लिया, कुछ भी हो गया. But even before that, I think what is important is whenever you are buying something, please do write down why you have bought what you have bought and what do you expect to happen. Right? जैसे कोई आके बोलता है मुझे ना ये स्टॉक बहुत अच्छा लगता है, कोई आके बोलता है. So my next question to that person is कि 2 लाइन में 3 लाइन में बताओ क्या है, कि क्यों आपको क्विकली बता दो. तो इसमें 2 चीज़ें हैं, एक तो इसने सोचा है क्या इसके बारे में, एंड सेकंड मुझे वो रिचर्ड फेनमन वाज़ अ फेमस अमेरिकन साइंटिस्ट, उसकी लाइन बहुत अच्छी लगती है दैट इफ यू हैव रियली अंडरस्टूड समथिंग वेल, यू शुड बी एबल टू एक्सप्लेन इट टू अ 5 ईयर ओल्ड. So if that person is able to tell me in 3 sentences why he likes the stock, I know that he has thought very deeply about it. He has excluded the noise and only given me the crux.
What is an example of a good answer?
What is the example of a good answer? So जो हमने what did we buy recently? So you bought an aluminum stock, for instance, right? इसका simple one line rationale ये है कि 1/3 of the cost of aluminum is electricity. Right? You need to smelt alumina and make it into aluminum. The cost of electricity globally is going up for various reasons. One is the AI data centers are pulling in more power, which means that the cost of electricity is going up. This is one part that when you are buying aluminum, you are actually buying electricity. China, which is the largest producer and supplier of aluminum, has capped its supply at 45 million tons. Right? So the incremental supply in aluminum is not going to increase, at least from China. And everything which is new age, be it electric vehicles, be it data centers, requires aluminum, right? So if you find an aluminum company which has a lot of its raw materials within its own control, which is either bauxite, alumina, and has power which is reasonably cheap, then you have a winner. So उसमें 3 चीज़ बोली मैंने कि alumina is electricity, electricity is power costs are going up. If you have your own power, you have a competitive advantage. China, which is the largest supplier of aluminum in the world, is not going to increase its supply. Right? ये तीसरा चीज़ बोला. And the third thing was that whatever you like in all these new age manufacturing things and even robotics, aluminum will have a role to play in these things. So ये 3 चीज़ें मिला के aluminum is a good place, and then what you need to do is just figure out a bit about the company's corporate governance, where it stands on the cost curve, valuations क्या है, and you're done. So I was able to tell you why aluminum in 3 broad sentences.
Yeah.
So I look for that when anybody pitches your stock. Did you get convinced on why aluminum?
Yeah. I mean, very simple reasons.
Yeah.
Ki cost of electricity is going up. Aluminium stock, like 1/3 of the cost is electricity. And because of all the new age things, EVs, data
Exactly.
centers, power is going to increase. So, I mean, yeah, three clear.
And China is not increasing supply.
Yeah, Chile is like not going to increase the supply.
So which basically means that I have not talked to you about global demand. I have not talked to you about global supply. I have not talked to you about deficit. I have not talked to you about the fact that one aluminum mine in some corner of the world has shut. Another aluminum mine in another corner of the world is coming up. ये सब मैंने पढ़ा है, देखा है, सोचा है, but I am saying it is not core to the rationale. It is important. You should know this in the background. So I think that exclusion, right? I mean, जैसे आप sharpen करते हो एक pencil को, you have to keep shaving those things off and keep only what is important for writing. Even in the rationale. It sometimes rationale लिखने के लिए ना लोग पोथा लिख देते हैं कि 10, 12, 15 पेज का पोथा लिख देते हैं. So that's not the idea. The idea is just tell me quickly why. In terms of 3 bullet points. And 3 bullet points का कोई science नहीं है, but it just forces you to think very clearly. It's like that 140 character limit that you have on X, which forces you to probably, अभी 140 बढ़ गया होगा, which forces you to write sharply. So that has been always, even when I speak to my analysts, I speak to sell-side analysts, I'm like, 3 bullet point बता, and then you can keep double clicking on as much as you want. So you can ask me then that, okay, electricity is 1/3, बाकी क्या होता है, उसका क्या है, वो कहाँ से आ रहा है, what about the Middle East disruption, if that gets normalized, is the aluminum story over? So then you can keep double clicking all these things as much as you want. Under what circumstances do you think China increases supply? Can aluminum be replaced by something else as a metal? Can there be a new age thing which will affect demand, etc. So our conversation has now become very structured rather than just a fact collection dossier. It has now become sort of double clicking on a lot of things.
From what I understand, so is it fair to say that आपका जो stock selection process है, it is more top down and more macro focused, where you will first identify कि okay macro trends क्या चल रहा है, and then you will decide कि कौन से stock में invest करना है, instead of a bottom up stock selection which is more like company study करना?
So we sit at an intersection, right? जैसे maybe I'll spend a minute कि हमारा काम कैसा है. So we invest in emerging markets. So emerging markets matlab it's a whole host of I think 25 odd countries which get classified as emerging markets. They start with Korea, Taiwan, China, India, Brazil, Indonesia, Poland, Greece, Mexico, Brazil, काफी.
तो आप ये सारे कंट्रीज में इन्वेस्ट करते हो?
सारे कंट्रीज हमारा इन्वेस्टमेंट यूनिवर्स है.
अच्छा,
हम इन्वेस्ट करेंगे ही ऐसा नहीं. सो वी रन अ 35 to 40 स्टॉक emerging market portfolio.
ओके.
So इसका गणित ऐसा होता है that even if you look for a reasonable size, right, which is $1 billion of market cap and $5 million of daily trading volume, कि थोड़ा institutional portfolio बनाना है तो थोड़ा trading volume होना चाहिए, थोड़ा market cap होना चाहिए. 4,000 कंपनी है which fit this criteria across emerging markets. हम लोग जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कुल मिला के 8 इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रोफेशनल्स है. तो 8 लोग को 4,000 कंपनी एनालाइज करना है. थॉट अबाउट इट दैट वे. ये ह्यूमनली इम्पॉसिबल है. 3 जन्म लग जाएंगे तो नहीं कर सकते. सो इसके लिए व्हाट वी हैव डन इज दैट वी हैव 2 वेज ऑफ coming to this 35-40 stock portfolio. The first way is what is the top down way, जो आपने बोला, the macro way, and we have a very very strong macro team at Breakout Capital which looks at different countries' economic realities. It looks at its economic forecast, makes its own forecast, and says that of these 25 countries, these 10 countries are not worth investing. Right? They say that whatever, they have macro challenges, growth slow है, fiscal deficit high है, current account deficit high है, whatever. So it's a very macro way of thinking कि ये 10 देशों में इन्वेस्ट ही करना नहीं है. So 4,000 में से वो स्टॉक कम हो गए. The next thing that you do is you look for, then you come to the bottom up side of things, right? On the bottom up side of things, we look for ROE, return on equity, which is basically the kind of returns that you make on the capital that you have invested at a company level, which is probably the most important metric. So we have certain requirements for an ROE of a company, which should either be a steady profile or something which is going up. So we look for those two things in the ROE profile. Then we look at earnings growth and then we look at valuations. So top down में से countries exclude हो जाते हैं. इस quantitative process से low ROE companies, low growth companies या high valuation companies काफी exclude हो जाती है. And then it boils you down to about maybe 200, 300, 500 stocks could be, wherein you then start deciding, okay, this is actually my investment universe. So our investment style is a combination of these two things. So if you're a India only investor, वो पहला पार्ट करने का जरूरत ही नहीं है.
राइट.
बिकॉज आप एक ही देश में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हो.
करेक्ट.
राइट. सो यू डिड नॉट लुक too much at the macro. But in India, then you can focus your energies. And I think a site like Screener does a great job of, and that's available for free. I mean, I'm just surprised and amazed that thing is available for free, where you can run screens on, any kind of metric, financial metric that you want. And for any young investor, my first suggestion would be familiarize yourself completely with Screener. कोई भी एक कंपनी डालो जिसका आपको एनालिसिस करना है, आपको किसी बड़े भाई ने बताया है, किसी ने टिप दिया है, कोई व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप, टेलीग्राम ग्रुप, कहीं से भी कुछ भी आया है. द फर्स्ट थिंग टू डू इज जस्ट पुट दैट कंपनीज नेम इन स्क्रीनर एंड ट्राई एंड सी व्हाट ऑल आउटपुट्स यू आर सीइंग. आपको एक सेंस आ जाएगा कि एक ऊपर ही आपको पी दिख जाएगा क्या है, कि अगर वो 120 130 पी है तो ये मतलब बहुत ही महंगा कंपनी है. Then you look at some of the return profiles, you can look at growth. So at least you'll start thinking in the right direction, right? And this takes nothing. It's available on the phone.
Yeah.
So इसका मतलब ये नहीं ये fool proof method है चीज करने का. But at least try and start grounding your investments into fundamentals.
So let's divide this into 2 parts. So
Sure.
first macro वाला जो आपने बताया कि top down में you will first select the country, and I've also like taken some screenshots from your website as well in terms
Yes.
of आप कैसे इसको macro में डिसाइड करते हो कौन से कंट्री में इन्वेस्ट करना है. एंड देन द सेकंड पार्ट व्हिच इज द बॉटम अप, व्हिच इज द माइक्रो. एक बार कंट्री डिसाइड कर दी तो उसमें फिर बॉटम अप में कैसे इन्वेस्ट करना है. तो मैक्रो में अभी आपके कंट्री सिलेक्शन के लिए ये 10 रूल्स है जो बेसिकली आप देखते हो कि अगर ये रूल्स बेटर रहेंगे तो आप इसके बेसिस पे कंट्री सिलेक्ट करते हो कहाँ पे इन्वेस्ट करना है. So can you walk us
Sure.
कि आप कैसे ये 10 रूल सिलेक्ट करते हो and then इससे कंट्री कैसे सिलेक्ट करते हो?
Sure. So emerging markets, as I said, is 25 odd countries. This framework was originally devised by my colleague Ruchir Sharma. He wrote a book called Breakout Nations, and then he wrote another book called 10 Rules for Successful Nations, which is exactly based on this. So normally क्या होता है, you visit a country, for instance, let's say you and I go to Sri Lanka, right? छोटा देश है, we go there not to lie down on the beach, but think about it as a investment destination कि इस देश में invest करना चाहिए, नहीं करना चाहिए. So we will come back with a lot of anecdotal, macro, maybe bottom up. We'll come back with a potly of information. Right? That information will be about companies, that information will be about the country, the economy. सब लेके आके बम्बई में अपन एक टेबल पे रख देंगे दोनों. And then we'll say कि अभी क्या करना चाहिए इसका. So is there a way to formalize this? Is there a way to templatize this? क्योंकि जैसे हम दोनों श्रीलंका गए हैं, ये दोनों बांग्लादेश गए हैं, तो वो भी एक पोटली लेके आए हैं. सो अभी क्या करना है कि शुड श्रीलंका में इन्वेस्ट करना है, बांग्लादेश, हाउ डू वी रैंक दीज टू? मैं बोलूँगा मुझे बहुत ही अच्छा लगा, द कंट्री वाज वेरी क्लीन. वो बोलेगा मुझे बहुत ही अच्छा लगा, द प्रोडक्शन कैपेबिलिटीज ऑफ बांग्लादेश आर वेरी गुड. तो अभी क्या करें? हाउ डू यू, यहाँ 5 डाले, वहाँ 5 डाले, हाउ डू यू डू इट? So this over many years was formalized as a way of ranking countries across different parameters that matter for investing. Right? So for instance, demographics matter, but may not matter so much for 12 months. Right? जैसे there are some aging economies. जैसे Korea is an aging economy. It's the best performing market over the past 18 months. So that aging may not have anything to do with a very short term performance. So we also weighted these indices in terms of if you are weighted these rules in terms of your investment horizon is 18 to 24 months, क्या करना चाहिए? So maybe I'll talk to one of them. So इसमें चौथा रूल है, समझो, debt. It says the size of debt matters, pace of increase matters more. Right? So कोई भी country में जाते हैं हम लोग, we will look at 3 levels of debt. What is the public debt? मतलब government ने कितना debt लिया हुआ है. What is the corporate debt? कंपनीज ने कितना डेट लिया हुआ है. एंड व्हाट इज द हाउस होल्ड डेट, मतलब कंज्यूमर्स ने कितना डेट लिया हुआ है. एंड दिस इज जनरली एक्सप्रेस्ड एज अ शेयर ऑफ जीडीपी. इट्स नेवर एन एब्सोल्यूट नंबर. सो व्हाट इज द पब्लिक डेट टू जीडीपी, व्हाट इज द हाउस होल्ड डेट टू जीडीपी, व्हाट इज द कंज्यूमर डेट टू जीडीपी. ये नंबर्स का हाई लो का एक हिस्टोरिकल एक बेंचमार्क है. जैसे आप अगर ब्लड टेस्ट करने जाओगे तो आपको बोलते हैं हाँ, हीमोग्लोबिन बिटवीन एक्स एंड वाई इज अ गुड नंबर. वाई के ऊपर नहीं, एक्स के नीचे नहीं. सो ओवर हिस्ट्री, ओवर आवर एक्सपीरियंस, फॉर ऑल दीज वी हैव सॉर्ट ऑफ अ सेंट्रल कि ये रेंज में अच्छा रेंज है. एंड व्हाट वी आर सेइंग हियर इज दैट द साइज ऑफ डेट मैटर. साइज इज दिस डेट टू जीडीपी नंबर. एंड व्हाट मैटर्स मोर इज द इंक्रीज. सो लेट्स से इन अ 5 years time frame, if your debt to GDP has increased a lot, which means there has been a lot of lending which has happened in the market, is generally not a good sign because it means that a fragility is building. जैसे
कौन से कंट्री में?
जैसे इंडिया में हुआ था, राइट? फॉर इंस्टेंस, इफ यू रिमेंबर, आरबीआई क्लैम्प डाउन ऑन अनसेक्योर्ड पर्सनल लोन्स इन 2024.
Okay.
Right? जहाँ पे पर्सनल लोन्स, क्रेडिट कार्ड लोन was proliferating. Right? The household debt was going up. Right? So people were just borrowing, maybe to play the markets, maybe for personal reasons, whatever. And RBI clamped down on it, saying that the risk weights that the banks need to keep aside for those loans went up, etc., etc. So I think the consumer debt in India in that phase, the household debt to GDP was going up very, very quickly. And RBI, I think rightly so, decided to clamp down on it, which actually followed with some asset quality issues on the consumer side. अगर आप small ticket personal loans देखो, वहाँ पे there were asset quality issues which followed after that. There was a binge in microfinance lending in India after COVID. Right? वहाँ पे credit to GDP within that subsector had gone up a lot, and then that sort of came off, which comes back to what I said about banks, right? कि 50-60% loan growth करने वाली bank NBFC is a red flag, to use a millennial term. It's not a green flag. I think वो green flag का जो अच्छा बीच का number है, I think is somewhere between, I would say 15 to 20, 25 max is a good space to be for a lending growth to happen. So this is how we integrate the macro. So then you will, at the end of it, क्या होता है? On these 10 rules, every country gets a composite score. And then you get a final overall score. And then we invest only in the top half. जैसे समझो हमने 26 countries के लिए किया, 80-90% of our investments will only be in the ऊपर के 13 देश. नीचे के 13 देशों में, जैसे हमारा टर्की में कुछ पैसा नहीं है, थाईलैंड में हमारा कुछ पैसा नहीं है, amongst the markets in Asia. So that is how this helps.
So अभी आपने ये 10 रूल्स कर दिया, एक्सप्लेन कर दिया कि ये 10 रूल से आप सिलेक्ट करोगे कि कौन से कंट्री में इन्वेस्ट करना है नहीं. ये 10 रूल्स के बेसिस पे इफ आई कैन आस्क यू, कोरिया, ताइवान, जहाँ पर ये सारे TSMC, सैमसंग, SK हाइनिक्स, ये सारे स्टॉक्स रैली हो रहे हैं, तो आपके 10 रूल्स फ्रेमवर्क में ये कंट्रीज कहाँ पे आ रही है?
So Korea, Taiwan are a bit of an exception when it comes to emerging markets. क्योंकि आपको अब उनका अगर पर कैपिटा GDP देखो, they are more like developed countries. वो होना नहीं चाहिए. So India's per capita GDP is more like 3,000. Korea, Taiwan are probably 8 to 10x of that number. So they are more like developed markets. This framework is actually made for an emerging markets which are in the low and mid income sort of a space. Korea, Taiwan में इसके लिए you have to more think about what are the themes that are working, because the macro is going to be very, very stable. Right? For this framework, for instance, is not going to work really well in developed markets, right? Because the macro in Germany or the Euro area doesn't change a lot. It's the same low growth sort of a country. Short answer, in Korea, Taiwan, they would rank well on some of the metrics, especially now, given the growth that is happening in both those. So they are running double-digit nominal GDP growths after a long, long time. So on at least the growth side of the parameters, they are looking good. But China especially has a debt problem. We know that. Korea has a consumer debt problem. Consumer credit to GDP in Korea is in triple digits. It's more like 100%, which in India, just for context, is about 40% or somewhere thereabouts. Right? So the Korean consumer, and that typically happens. इसमें कोई बड़ा बात नहीं है, that as your income level goes up, as your income stability goes up, people tend to lend more to you. Right? If my income is not stable, मैं तुमको lend नहीं करूँगा. Which is why in some of the developed markets, you'll get a larger leverage when you are buying a house versus in India. India में जैसे loan to value ratio, आप अगर 100 रुपए का घर खरीद रहे हो, आपको 70-75 का लोन मिलेगा. In a developed market, you might get almost 90, right? Because stable income hai, you know that there's a track record of income, etc., etc. But even then, I would say the Korea's consumer debt to GDP is very, very high, which basically means that the ability for the consumer to grow is not big. So in Korea, we don't own any consumer companies in Korea. We own the tech side of things, which is the thematic. So in that sense, this framework also helps you exclude sectors, right? Sectors where, let's say, the debt to GDP ratios are high, you tend to high and increasing. You tend to avoid those places. In a place like Turkey, inflation is runaway. Inflation is in its 30s. So inflation is at 30% per annum plus. So you tend to avoid these kind of places. So Turkey, in that 4,000 stocks that I mentioned, Turkey might have 150 stocks which match that parameter. But we have spent no time on it.
Yeah.
That exclusion has happened at the macro level because on this inflation, which is the sixth parameter, is off the charts. So we do not really want to invest in that country.
So top 3 या top 5 countries अभी कौन से हो रहे हैं आपके emerging markets में basis this?
So in our portfolio, right, we have exposure in Latin America.
Brazil
we have Brazil. We have in Argentina. We have exposure in parts of Europe, which is Poland and Greece. We obviously have exposure in India, which we like. We have recently initiated some positions in South Africa, which is also an emerging market. So if you think about emerging markets as a whole, there are 4 big countries, right? Korea, Taiwan, China, and India. ये चारों मिला के, at least from an MSCI index standpoint, ये चारों मिला के 80% है. So if you're running an emerging market portfolio, you will have some money allocated in these countries. But there is a whole host of other countries which are more at 1%, 2%, 5% of the index, where I think you need to be sure. We have money in Vietnam as well, for instance. It's a country that we like. So on this parameter, and these are all based on the parameters that I talked about. And countries, as we have said, we don't have anything, is Turkey, we have nothing. Thailand, we have nothing. So those are some of the countries where we have zero exposure.
Got it. So LATAM and Vietnam, like Brazil, Vietnam, पोलैंड, ग्रीस, ये 4-5 मेजर कंट्रीज है जहां पर आप अभी इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हो basis these rules.
As I said, for a Korea, Taiwan is a bit of an asterisk because these rules are useful, but those are more very developed market sort of countries where you need to be mindful of what's the global theme which is playing out there.
Yeah, fair. And इसमें what about Philippines? Like Philippines भी एक country जो आपको लग रहा है undervalued है अभी?
Yeah, so all of ASEAN is very, very undervalued,
Okay.
right? ASEAN includes places like Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, even Vietnam.
तो क्या हो रहा है? Why is it undervalued?
So it's under so as my boss Ruchir Sharma recently wrote, right, the world is getting split into two parts. There are AI beneficiaries and there are countries which are not beneficiaries of AI. So AI beneficiaries are Korea, of course, US to start with. There is Korea, Taiwan, and maybe a bit of China. Everybody else in the emerging markets is pretty much an AI not a beneficiary. इंडिया इंक्लूडेड एंड यू वुड हैव हर्ड दिस ये आर्गुमेंट काफ़ी सुनने को मिलता है कि इंडिया में एआई प्ले नहीं है जिसकी वजह से द इंडियन मार्केट्स हैवंट डन वेल फॉर द पास्ट कपल ऑफ इयर्स आसियान मार्केट इज इन एग्जैक्टली दैट बकेट दैट एआई प्ले नहीं है इनफैक्ट फिलीपींस एज यू नो हैज अ लॉट ऑफ बीपीओ इंडस्ट्री विच इज फ्रंट एंड सेंटर चैलेंज्ड बाय एआई राइट कि अगर आप अब कोई भी वेबसाइट पे जाओ तो वहाँ पे आजकल चैटबॉट होता है कि जहाँ पे आपको कुछ भी है तो यू पुट इट इन अ चैटबॉट तो पुराना कॉल सेंटर होता था दैट यू कॉल्ड अप अ नंबर एंड स्पोक टू अ ह्यूमन इफ यू हैड एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ अ सर्विस इशू और अ कस्टमर इशू that is over. I mean, that's no longer happening. So there are still mostly things are solved by an AI chatbot, which helps you do things. And only in exceptional cases, maybe 2 out of 10, you will end up speaking to a human. आज भी जैसे ऑफिस में मेरा कंप्यूटर पे कुछ इशू रहता है, आई थिंक एलएलएम को पूछ के ही मैं सॉल्व करता हूँ मोस्ट टाइम्स। अर्लियर आई वुड हैव टू कॉल समबडी फ्रॉम आईटी सपोर्ट और समथिंग। वो सब नहीं हो रहा है। सो दोज़ आर द सॉर्ट ऑफ डिसएडवांटेजेस दैट अ कंट्री लाइक फिलीपींस हैज़। फिलीपींस आल्सो हैज़, जो अगेन हमारे रूल्स में कैप्चर होगा। इट हैज़ अ ट्विन डेफिसिट प्रॉब्लम।
करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट
एंड अ फिस्कल डेफिसिट, जिसका सिंपल लैंग्वेज में मीनिंग ये होता है दैट यू आर डिपेंडेंट अ लॉट ऑन द काइंडनेस ऑफ स्ट्रेंजर्स। जैसे आपका करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट होता है, उसका मतलब क्या है कि आप इंपोर्ट ज़्यादा कर रहे हो, एक्सपोर्ट्स कम कर रहे हो। उसका मतलब आपको दुनिया से पैसा चाहिए टू बी एबल टू ब्रिज दैट गैप। समबडी नीड्स टू इन्वेस्ट इन। फिस्कल डेफिसिट का क्या मतलब होता है कि द गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग मोर देन इट इज रिसीविंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ रेवेन्यू, which means that somebody needs to fund the government for the gap.
Yeah, similar to India, right? India
Similar
has
to
also
India.
gone through this same problem.
India
right?
has gone through
Twin
the same
deficit.
problem, but I think the current account deficit of India has come down materially over a long period of time. The fiscal deficit of India is directionally, both things are in the right place. Philippines का वो improvement बहुत ज़्यादा हुआ नहीं है, which makes the country very vulnerable as an economic model. जैसे 2013 में India was at the same place, right? You had a high inflation, almost 8-9% inflation, and current account deficit was almost 5%. I wouldn't say Philippines is in that dire straits, but उसका maybe a milder version है, जिसके चलते लोग बोल रहे AI नहीं है, some of the main industries seem to be challenged, and you have this economic problem, why bother? और आपने ये जो चार्ट दिखाया, this chart is personification of why bother.
Right? तो इसमें दिखा रहे हैं कि प्राइस अर्निंग्स बहुत ही कम है। This is one of the lowest.
Yeah, it's one of the lowest. Basically, foreigners have just exited, or investors have just exited that market in a big way. And that has happened in the last 2-3 years. अगर आप देखो तो this was almost at 20p in 2022. अगर आप peak बनाओगे वहाँ पे. So in the last 3 years, this market has, and that's true for most of ASEAN, has derated in a big way over the past 2-3 years. Can this correct itself? It can correct itself. The first thing which will help ASEAN is that if money starts to rotate out of AI for whatever reason, everybody seems to be obsessed with the hyperscalers and TSMC and SK Hynix and Samsung. If people say that, hey, listen, we need to reassess this, and there are दुनिया में और भी गम है, in the sense you can invest in other stocks in other countries as well. I think ASEAN could be one of the first beneficiaries, but we also feel India will be a big beneficiary, and we are seeing a bit of it. We are speaking in the middle of July. We are seeing a bit of it happen in terms of money starting to come back in from the foreigners.
तो अभी जैसे एआई ट्रेड आपने बताया कि इंडिया डजंट हैव दैट एआई एडवांटेज राइट नाउ बिकॉज इंडिया में कोई भी लिस्टेड कंपनीज में एआई कंपनीज तो है ही नहीं। एंड इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द केपेक्स दैट इज बीइंग डन ऑन द एआई फ्रंट, आई रेड कि 2026 में अभी तक कुछ $730 बिलियन का टोटल केपेक्स हो गया है बाय माइक्रोसॉफ्ट, अमेजॉन, मेटा एंड गूगल। एंड ये नंबर इंक्रीज ही हो रहा है, लाइक लास्ट 4 years में एवरी ईयर इट इज इंक्रीजिंग अगेन एंड अगेन। तो ये जो एआई केपेक्स हो रहा है, लाइक इसका क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा? एंड आपको लगता है कि ये जो पूरा एआई का जो स्टोरी चल रहा है, इज इट अ बबल व्हिच यू थिंक इज गोइंग टू बर्स्ट इन द फ्यूचर?
बबल का आंसर एंड में देता हूँ। पहले थोड़ा सा समझते हैं कि वो क्या रहा है एग्जैक्टली। सो जैसे आपने ये बोला, ये सब जो नाम है ओपन एआई, एंथ्रोपिक, गूगल, they are spending, as you rightly said, about $700 billion of
Yeah.
capex, which is huge, which is massive this year. And there are projections that this number will go up to 1 trillion in the next 2-3 years. So ये किस पे spend कर रहे हैं, क्यों spend कर रहे हैं? I think the spending is related mostly to what is known as servers and GPUs, which is data center. Right. So data center में होता क्या है? Data center में एक rack होता है. वो rack के अंदर there is a chip, there is a semiconductor on which there are a lot of memory chips also embedded. That is 70% of all the capex that is going into servers and chips. So जब भी आप कोई भी LLM हो, जैसे Gemini में हो, आप एक query डालते हो, the processing that is required to answer that query happens in the data center, happens on that chip, which has got a processing facility, or which has got a processing power, which is built into two parts. There is a memory, and then there is a processing ability. I don't want to get too technical about this, but anytime that you put in a query on a Claude or on a Gemini or whatever it is, it is using data center capacity.
Yeah,
So
I've just opened this. So is this correct? Like ये layers है total,
yes,
and maybe एक layer ये AI space में एक हर एक
Yes.
use हो रहा है.
yes, absolutely. So this is a $700 billion big apple which is sort of being spent. इसके beneficiaries कौन है? पहले तो है Nvidia, which designs the chips which are required to be put in the data center.
ये chips में Nvidia आ गया.
Nvidia आ गया
Okay.
chips में. पहला ये जो Blackwell, Rubin, named after multiple scientists. Then there is AMD, then there is Google, TPU, Amazon, Trinium, Microsoft, Maya, whatever. So Nvidia is the big 800-pound gorilla in this space. Nvidia uses TSMC. TSMC stands for Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, which is one of the largest chip manufacturing companies in the world to manufacture these chips. So TSMC in Taiwan, and you'll be surprised that 55%, if not more, of Taiwanese index is TSMC.
Oh my God, one company,
One single stock.
55%.
Yeah. So when somebody tells me I'm a Taiwan fund manager, I'm like, you're a TSMC fund manager. Because
Yeah.
बाकी सब बहुत छोटा है. As I said, right, in this context, using that macro framework does not give you a lot of help, because one company is so huge in that country. Now maybe there are a couple of small consumer companies, etc. We digress. If you come to the chip has 2-3 parts, right? The chip has a memory part, which is where bulk of the action is today, which is SK Hynix and Samsung. So memory is not a new business. Memory is an age-old business. आपके phone में memory है, आपके laptop में memory है. But this needs lots and lots of memory, right? When you put in a query or a prompt, it needs to extract a lot from memory, process it, and give you the answer. Right? So the chips need to have huge amounts of memory. And again, without getting too technical, there are 2-3 types of memory with increasing capabilities. And there is a shortage of the highest capability memory, which is required in AI chips. And दुनिया में memory chips बनाने वाली maybe 10-12 companies है. And उसमें से जो advanced chips की मैं advanced memory chips की मैं जो बात कर रहा हूँ, वो SK Hynix और Samsung, ये दो ही कंपनियां pretty much दुनिया में बनाती हैं.
88% of the
HBM market. Yes, HBM is the name of that highest end chip,
Yeah.
high bandwidth memory. Is made by, so हमने शुरू किया hyperscaler से, who are spending a lot of money on data centers. That data centers में क्या होता है? There are chips which are designed by Nvidia, made by TSMC, और chip के अंदर वो memory chips बैठता है. Those are made by SK Hynix and those are made by Samsung, which is where the current bottleneck is, कि capacity नहीं है. जितना compute का demand है, जितना data centers लगाना है, उतना memory बनाने का capacity है नहीं. And this sudden surge in demand has caught everybody by surprise, right? As I said, memory is an age-old business. उसमें Moore's law apply होता है. Moore's law का क्या मतलब है? कि वही area of a chip will have more and more memory power, because your chips are getting more and more advanced. So there is a supply increase which keeps happening just because of technology.
मैं समझा नहीं, तो वही एरिया को ज्यादा पावर
वही एरिया में you will be able to store more memory. You will be able to have higher processing power because your chips are getting more and more advanced.
Okay.
Right? So your capacity, which is measured in, let's say, wafers, your capacity, which is measured in the ability to make those things, may not grow at a headline level, but it will grow in terms of your GB level. कि कितनी memory GB है, कितनी memory, which is why memory has typically been a very deflationary sector. इसीलिए memory में capacity लगाने से लोग डरते हैं. क्योंकि कॉपर समझो, आई विल गिव यू एन एग्जांपल ऑफ काउंटर कॉपर, कि कॉपर माइन है, उसका आउटपुट इज नॉट गोइंग टू इंक्रीज, राइट, अनलेस यू बाय अ न्यू माइन और अनलेस यू स्टार्ट digging for something new. The same factory can now produce more in terms of GB, which is the gigabytes of memory, because the technology has gotten upgraded. इसीलिए लोग नया मेमोरी केपेक्स लगाने से डरते हैं, which is what we are seeing today, that memory capex hasn't been done for ages possibly, and which is what is creating this squeeze. और मेमोरी चाहिए, so that's reflecting in prices. So the prices for HBM, DRAM अगर आप ये ट्रैक करते हो, those are through the roof. And इसका सिंपल मैनिफेस्टेशन है कि आज अगर आप बाहर जाओगे, आपको 10,000 रुपये का नीचे फ़ोन नहीं मिलेगा, स्मार्टफ़ोन, which wasn't the case 12 months ago. That is because the memory chip in the phone is the same memory, उसमें कोई अलग चीज़ नहीं है. That memory chip in the phone has now become more and more expensive, which is why in a cheaper phone, in a 10,000 rupee phone, the cost of memory as a percentage of that 10,000 rupees बहुत ज़्यादा है. In an Apple phone, which is 1 lakh, 1,50,000, whatever that number is, वो बहुत ज़्यादा है नहीं. So Apple can navigate this memory price increase by taking a price hike of 1,000, 2,000 rupees. पर 10,000 का फ़ोन अभी 12-13,000 का हो गया. So आपको 10,000 के नीचे अच्छा फ़ोन नहीं मिलेगा, 50,000 के नीचे अच्छा लैपटॉप नहीं मिलेगा, राइट? जो मे बी if you think about it a year ago, you could have gotten a good laptop at 35,000-40,000 rupees at an entry level basic laptop. So the memory price inflation, which is caused by AI data centers, is affecting these things, which is why entry level phones in India last I read were down some 20-30% in terms of volumes. लोग नहीं खरीद रहे because it's become so expensive. So I think that is how some OpenAI is spending money on something और मेरा phone महंगा हो गया. Right? I mean, you don't see the connection between these two things, but that is what has happened.
Even Apple increased their prices of iPad, MacBook
Everybody,
and all, right?
you have to increase prices because memory prices are, I mean, gold and silver को they'll put to shame. ऐसे बढ़ रहे हैं memory prices, right? Because of this supply squeeze that I just mentioned. 32-inch television अगर आप लेने जाओ, तो that would have gone up by 20%, 25%, because that's the entry level television sort of. जैसे आपका ये बड़ा है, but the first छोटा जो 32-inch स्क्रीन होता है, 10,000 रुपये का जो एक एंड्रॉयड होता था, जनरली सबका एक एंट्री लेवल 8-10,000 रुपये में एक आध फोन ले लेते थे. वेरी हार्ड टू कम बाय बिकॉज दिस मेमोरी प्राइसेस हैव गॉन थ्रू द रूफ.
तो इसमें इन सबका सो फाइनल आंसर क्या है? लाइक एआई बबल है, बस्ट होने वाला है, क्या है?
I thought you will forget it. But you brought me back to it.
I don't forget so easily.
I can make that out. So before giving an answer, let's see what can make this not work. Right? What can make this not work is generally the amount of money that is getting spent on AI in terms of जो 700 billion बोलो, 1 trillion बोलो. If the cost of money goes up, interest rate hike हो गया, liquidity tighten हो गया, money becomes more expensive. अगर money dear हो गया, तो ये spending, क्योंकि lot of these companies have also started borrowing now in the markets, right? Earlier they did not borrow. They are borrowing to spend. अगर borrowing cost बढ़ गई, availability of liquidity बढ़ गई, so the spend will come down, right? So think about anything that will cause this 700 number not to go to 1 trillion, but can go to maybe 500. अगर ये हो गया, तो ये नीचे का सब affect हो जाएगा, right? So the first thing that can happen is, can the cost of money go up? Can interest rates go up, which causes this to happen? Second is, somebody wakes up and says that, oh, $700 billion of spending, how are you going to make return on this money? तो $700 billion पे अगर अपना एकदम बेसिक रूल ऑफ थम है कि भैया 10-15% तो बनाना है, तो $700 billion के स्पेंडिंग पे $100 billion का प्रॉफिट बनेगा क्या? फॉर मी टू से कि अच्छा चलो ये 15% ROI बिजनेस है, अभी के लिए तो दिख नहीं रहा है. बिकॉज चाइनीज हैव ऑल्सो कम अप विथ फ्री मॉडल्स. जैसे आपको जेमिनाई के लिए पैसा देना पड़ता है, या क्लॉड के लिए आपको पैसा देना पड़ता है इफ़ यू वांट टू यूज़ द प्रो वर्जन्स. द चाइनीज LLMs विच इज़ क्वेन और बाबा का, अलीबाबा का जो टेंसेंट का जो मॉडल है, इट्स अवेलेबल फॉर फ्री.
अच्छा,
You can use it as much as you want.
even DeepSeek, क्या? DeepSeek and all?
I mean, DeepSeek is now sort of a yesterday story, but the newer Chinese models and a lot of people who consume this a lot tend to use the Chinese models more because they're free. Why should I pay so much for token costs when I can use the Chinese model? So at some point in time, somebody is going to say that, hey, show me the returns on this money. Is Kushal going to pay? Is Swanand going to pay this kind of money to use LLM? Are enterprises going to pay? If that question gets asked, that will start reflecting in stock prices of these companies, etc., etc. And that is when some of this capex can get pulled back. The other issue can be a big technological change, right? Because this is at the end of the day a 700 billion problem to solve. What if, and I'm no expert on technology, but what if AI computation doesn't need a data center? What if it can happen on your edge device or on your phone? कि जो आपने query किया in Claude or Google gets processed on the phone itself. That the phone memory becomes so strong or so powerful that it gets done there itself and does not need to be done in a processor in the US or wherever. Then it will crunch this capex in a big way and also take it away from some of these other things that we are talking about. That could be one thing. Demand destruction, as I mentioned, is already happening because prices are up. Laptops, mobile phones, usme dikh raha hai. Is it a bubble or no? I think a lot of money has gone into it. So if you look at it from a top-down standpoint, all the signs of a bubble are there, right? Leverage trading हो रहा है. लोग लोन लेके SK Hynix, Samsung खरीद रहे हैं. 700 billion is one of the biggest. There we go. 700 billion is one of the biggest capex numbers on a single theme that we have seen in the US. So all the top-down signs are very, very strong, and we have already seen Kospi, which is the Korean stock market. It has had a crazy ride. 1.5 साल पहले December 2024, it went from 2500. ये इंडेक्स की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं, कोई स्टॉक नहीं है. And this is like Nifty or Sensex. ये कोरिया का इंडेक्स है. From 2500 it went to 9000, right, in a space of 18 months. So it has gone up 3.5 times, almost 4 times in 18 months. And from that 9,000, it's back down now in the middle of July to about 6,800, 6,700. So that's been the sort of, volatility in this whole thing. What has also happened is that within MSCI, I think these 3 companies which I mentioned, which is SK Hynix, Samsung and TSMC, अब ये तीनों मिला के 30% of the index है. They are huge. So anything that you look at from a top-down standpoint, right, you will say this is a bubble. This is crazy. Everything is being driven seems by this thing. If you look at it on a bottom-up basis, if I ask you ये कॉस्पी का ऐसा राइड हुआ है from 2500 to 9000, क्या पी होगा कॉस्पी का? तो हमारे when we associate something with a bubble, we associate it with 70 पी, 80 पी, 90 पी, 100 पी हो गया, बहुत बबल है. 5 पी है कॉस्पी का. And that is because the memory prices have gone through the roof and the profitability of Samsung and SK Hynix has gone through the roof. So the dichotomy is between the top-down way of looking at it, crazy trading, leverage buying, bottom-up, we are saying 5 peak, what bubble? So there, that is where we are stuck in the middle, right? So you get arguments from both sides. They're saying 5p it's okay, and there seems to be sustainability, right? I mean, the chairman of SK Hynix yesterday said that memory shortage is going to last till 2030. He might be talking his own book, but that's what he said. So unfortunately, there is no clear answer. But if you are invested in these stocks, please brace for volatility. A, and second, be extremely, as you say, light-handed with these stocks. In the sense, if you see signs of trouble, etc., be ready to exit them, because there has been a lot of investing, and if that 700 billion number goes in the reverse direction, then that 5p is not going to matter, right? People are going to say, okay, hey, this is over. It is 5 today, but the earnings are going to collapse so much that it's going to be 20 2 years out. So sorry to not give you a clear answer, but this is the framing of the debate.
This is helpful, and I think I, of course, agree with you कि इसका कोई clear answer नहीं है, like yes or no. But you've also like indexed and you've tried to compare these bubbles with the other like Japanese real estate and other things that happen in gold and silver through this chart. तो ये chart explain कर सकते हो आप audience को, like how do you interpret this?
So this is just different bubbles, and we have taken it from a research house. This is the different parabolic price actions, right? Which this is just price action.
Yeah.
This is the parabolic price action which happened in different kinds of things which eventually collapsed, right? So the first one is the gold and the silver bubble which happened in the 1970s, right? So the price went up 10x and then sort of came off. The similar thing happened in Japanese real estate, right? In 1989 when that bubble peaked, and then there was a sort of a long goodbye of, let's say, maybe 10, 20 years. Then there was a NASDAQ bubble, which is the TMT bubble that I talked to you about, the 99-2000, जहाँ पे मेरा 10,000 रुपया वही है, तो जो NASDAQ 100 लिखा है,
यहाँ पे
हाँ यही मेरा 10,000 रुपया है. So that is where my money came in, and that's how it kind of went to zero. Then between 2003 and 7, there was this entire brick mania, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, where that went parabolic, and the US technology bubble has shown exactly the same thing. in terms of the price action.
Hmm.
And this is measuring what's happening on the US technology stock prices. As I said, right, if you look at it from any top-down metric, which is price action, market cap creation, profits as a share of GDP, the amount of investments. So the only thing that is probably keeping the US GDP afloat is this spending on AI. जो AI में खर्चा हो रहा है, जो hyperscalers spend कर रहे हैं, that is what's keeping the growth afloat.
Yeah.
So that is what this chart is trying to say. That if you compare price action, there is history.
Yeah.
There is historical patterns to this.
You also done one very interesting study जहाँ पर आपने एक ये भी दिखाया था कि रिकवरी को कितना साल हुआ था वो वाले बबल के इवेंट्स में फॉर एग्जांपल आई थिंक जापानीज रियल एस्टेट का जब बबल हुआ था टू रिकवर दैट इंडेक्स टू रिकवर टू इट्स ओरिजिनल प्राइस इट टुक 34 years फॉर जापान टू कम बैक टू इट्स ओरिजिनल
Yes.
प्राइस and that was a very big number. तो ये usually अलग-अलग cases में कितने साल लगे
So
recover होने में?
it's very different, right? Sometimes what happens, and let's talk about the TMT bubble,
हाँ.
the green one that we talked about, right?
Hmm.
And there are some parallels there in the sense that the technology on which this bubble was based was the internet. That technology remains today. That technology has multiplied multifold. So this is not whether AI is useful or AI is good, right? This is not about whether internet was useful, internet is good. It is about what the stock prices are saying or what the stock prices have done in terms of getting excited by this theme. So bubble is never, very rarely bubbles are unfounded. Bubbles have a core which is true. There was, and you can go back ages. There was the railroad bubble. There was, the South Sea bubble. I don't know, but even the BRICS commodity, when the earnings growth in the BRICS countries then was amazing. So
South Sea bubble तो Isaac Newton के time
South Sea bubble, yeah. So this was the Isaac Newton famous quote
Yeah,
that I can predict the motions of stars,
Correct.
and but I cannot predict the stock markets. So coming back, I think when do things come back also depends on the ferocity of the bubble. If the bubble is extremely ferocious, then things take a long time to come back. Or if the bubble is very disconnected from reality, it takes very long time. Or if it is a fad, if it's an outright fad, it never comes back. जैसे ट्यूलिप बल्ब मेनिया इन द many जैसे आपको ट्यूलिप बल्ब मेनिया इज वेरी ओल्ड बट इफ यू रिमेंबर इन 2020-21 देयर इज समथिंग नोन एज एनएफटी non-fungible tokens.
Yeah.
You don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah,
right?
actually.
खत्म हो गया वो.
Yeah, one of the most. I just read the last news I remember is one of the most expensive NFTs was that Beeple chart,
That's right.
which was sold for कितना था यार? I think some 50-60 million dollars.
Some crazy number.
Yeah,
And
crazy number.
there is no economic value beneath it.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you value an NFT really? So it was just a fad. It was a bubble. So those bubbles die, right? The TMT bubble, the Nasdaq bubble, actually came back, right? So for instance, even in India, if I remember this correctly, the 2000 price of Infosys, very good company, great quality. You saw that price again only in 2006. तो 6 साल लग गए, and that would be one of the fastest recovering stocks in this TMT bubble. There are probably tens of stocks that went to zero, right, after this bubble. So the recovery of the bubble at an index level is one story. There is another story which is of the individual stocks there, जिनके फंडामेंटल सॉलिड थे, अच्छी कंपनी थी, उसका प्राइस रिकवर होने को कितना टाइम लगा. एंड देयर आर सम कंपनीज व्हिच विल जस्ट गो टू जीरो. जिसमें द ओल्ड एनालॉजी ऑफ देयर इज अ टेनिस बॉल एंड एन एग, कि if you throw both things down, the tennis ball will eventually bounce back up, the egg will splatter on the ground, right? वो उठेगा नहीं वापस. So when a bubble bursts, you will get to know that there will be some companies which are good quality companies. Even Google took a long time to recover from this bubble. It's very different. The Japanese market took decades to come back from this bubble. So if this is a bubble and if this bursts, it will take a really long time even for the AI bubble for things to come back.
Yeah. आपने वो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एआई गंगोत्री का भी एक आर्टिकल लिखा था लाइक कि दिस ऑल एवरीथिंग इज जस्ट लाइक रिवर गंगा.
Correct.
कि स्टार्ट में एकदम प्योर होता है एंड
Yes.
देन जब वो एंड में जाता है तब कुछ ना कुछ मेल हो जाता है, right?
Correct. So I think I'd use that analogy in two contexts. One was the IPOs
Correct.
in India, and one was obviously to explain how the
Correct.
AI
तो
capex.
क्या है वो एक बार ऑडियंस को एक्सप्लेन करो.
So AI capex, what I mentioned, right? The Gangotri of the entire AI trade in the world is the $750 billion that these hyperscalers are spending. Right? वहाँ से सब शुरू होता है. वहाँ से सब excitement शुरू है. The 750 billion is a huge number in the context of history. No, I think the size of this spending hasn't happened as a percentage of GDP बोल लो, as a percentage of market cap बोल लो, for a very long time. I don't remember if there's a parallel there. सो वहाँ से शुरू होता है. सो वहाँ से पहले आप आते हो, ओके डेटा सेंटर में क्या जाता है? डेटा सेंटर में एनवीडिया, टीएसएमसी, एसके हाइनिक्स, सैमसंग. देन यू से ओके इसका जो बीच का कनेक्टिंग इक्विपमेंट होता है उसमें कॉपर लगता है. सो कॉपर इज़ ऑन अ टेयर. इफ यू हैव नोटिस्ड कॉपर हैज़ गॉन फ्रॉम 8,000 to 13,000 in terms of dollars per ton. Then you say okay cooling equipment लगता है. Because these things tend to heat up. A server, if you are using it for a long time, tends to heat up. So you need a lot of cooling equipment. You need a lot of power. Data centers consume the two things that data centers consume a lot is power and water. And it suddenly caused a revival in what was a dead sector, which was power. All over the globe, power and power equipment. I mean, 2-3 years ago, there was nothing happening there. But AI data centers is just one part of what will lead to increase in power consumption. But it's look at power stocks in India. All through the roof, right? There's a shortage. There's a genuine shortage because, as I keep saying, right, that this demand has come out of nowhere, right? Transformers, switch gears, nobody has set up capacity for ages, and that is suddenly is being hit with a lot of demand. And I think what you have to think about is what are the areas where supply can come back quickly, and if supply can come back quickly, then you need not be in those places. Or if there is a technological barrier, just a memory, making HBM memory is hard. It will take time. But let's say in lithium, mining lithium there's no technological barrier in mining lithium, right? It's basically if you know that there's a lithium reserve, you just start digging. That's about it. So lithium is very short cycle in terms of a supply response. So you may not want to buy a lithium stock, or if you want to buy it 3-6 महीने के लिए and then get out with it. So again, coming back, 700 billion data centers, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, कूलिंग, नेटवर्किंग. इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से अगर आप नीचे जाओ तो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बनाने के लिए क्या लगता है? व्हाट कैन स्विच ऑन क्विकली? जैसे अभी ये इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जो चाहिए डेटा सेंटर्स के लिए, इसके लिए मैं हाइड्रो पावर प्रोजेक्ट लगाने आज जाऊँ, 10 साल लग जाएंगे, राइट? टिल द हाइड्रो पावर का कम्स. सो व्हाट कैन हैपन क्विकली? न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी के लिए क्या लगता है? यूरेनियम, राइट? सो इट इज सैम ऑल्टमन एंड डैरियो स्पेंडिंग $700 billion. यूरेनियम चल रहा है, right? यहाँ पे, और uranium is doing well, or copper is doing well. So that is how that Ganges is starting to flow, and eventually it reaches Calcutta and it reaches to different parts. But you have to be very careful in terms of where you decide to invest. My suggestion there is, if you want to invest in this theme, stay as close to the source as possible. I would say stick to the top 2, 3, 4 beneficiaries that we. Again, not a recommendation, do your own research, but don't go too far down and find some obscure power transformer company down there and pay 100 PE for it. Right? You would rather stick closer to who are the beneficiaries of.
जो सबसे प्योर बेसिकली वो रिवर में सबसे
हाँ,
प्योर.
तो मतलब एग्जैक्टली. सो अगर गंगा जी की एनालॉजी लेनी है तो हरिद्वार के नीचे मत जाओ. Stay there is what I'm not even pure, but they are the most direct beneficiaries. Beneficiaries of this happening. There are, I feel, a lot of stocks which have gotten re-rated where they do benefit from this AI spending, but it's only a very small proportion of what they do which benefits from this AI spending.
But इंडिया में तो वो कैटेगरी में नहीं होगे ना, जो एकदम हरिद्वार वाली जो कैटेगरी है इंडिया में.
इंडिया में अगर AI खेलना है तो fortunately, unfortunately, you have to play some sort of a power / industrial
data center,
power industrials data center sort of a play. Just be careful is the only thing that I would suggest, right? I mean, as an investor, the hardest job is to time a bubble. How do you know that this is it? अगर ये मालूम होता तो I would be a trillionaire. But this is about odds, right? This is about how odds, when you see charts like these, the odds are shifting away from you. इतना समझना चाहिए. Your odds of success are shifting away from you. So अगर आपको मैं क्रिकेट एनालॉजी दूं, सो इट इज लाइक यू हैव 3 स्लिप्स, गली एंड कवर, राइट? ये सब लगाया हुआ है, बॉल स्विंग हो रहा है और आप कट शॉट मारने वाले हो. तो अभी आपका कट शॉट का ऑड्स बहुत कम है बिकॉज 3, 5, 4, 5 फील्डर अभी खड़े हैं. फिर भी आपका कट शॉट लग सकता है. यू माइट हिट अ गुड कट शॉट, इट विल गो थ्रू एंड लोग ताली बजाएंगे, अरे 5 फील्डर के बीच में से इसने निकाला, मतलब लेजेंड हो गया ये आदमी. But the probability that you are going to get caught, the swinging ball, 3 slips carrying over, is very high. You are much more safer playing that same shot जब वहाँ पे कोई खड़ा नहीं है, ना स्लिप है, ना गली है, ना कवर है. बॉल स्विंग हो रहा है तभी भी मारो, because you are safe, and that is valuation. So अगर ये यहाँ पे है, नीचे के पार्ट में है, that is when you are okay playing that cut shot. That is when the valuations are in your favor. You are okay. And maybe if it doesn't work, you make a bit of a profit, a bit of a loss, and then you get out of it. But here, there is a chance of permanent loss of capital, right? My permanent loss of capital was what I started with, my stock market journey. That money went to zero. The stock stopped
Yeah.
trading. So be careful of that. So you have to, investing is all about thinking in probabilities. There are no, unfortunately, you crave a yes no answer. Bubble है नहीं है बताओ.
Yeah.
पर इसमें पैसा खोने का probability ज़्यादा है. Is
Right.
what I can say. बट सम टुमारो पैसा इसमें बन जाएगा. लोग बोलेंगे अरे पैसा बन गया, तुम लोग बोलते पर probability ज़्यादा है. But this is about odds. This is about, the odds are probably not in your favor given the kind of price action that has happened. It's like saying that there is a 20%, 80% probability that it's going to rain today. If it doesn't rain, जो बोल रहे तुम तो बोले थे, मैं बोला मैं 20% नहीं होगा ये भी तो बोला था. So I think it is that
Yeah.
in investing, I think this is a skill you need to master. You are craving certainty, you are not going to get it. You are craving a 0-1 answer. You are craving a binary answer. बबल है नहीं है बताओ, करूँ हाँ ना, yes, no, tell me. Nobody can give you that answer. It's about odds.
क्रिकेट का एग्जाम्पल जो आपने दिया, आई थिंक आपने आपके सबैटिकल में सीखा होगा ये सब शॉट्स. आई एम श्योर गैरी कंस्टन अकेडमी में आप केप टाउन में जब गए थे तब आपने सीखे होंगे ये सारे शॉट्स, राइट?
So I primarily went there to work on my leg spin bowling, which is probably one of the hardest skills in cricket, is what I still feel. So I worked on that primarily. I did a bit of batting, but it was a memorable experience.
We'll definitely come back to your sabbaticals thing. मुझे उस पे भी डिस्कस करना है. Just before that, so bottom up पे like we just spend some time. So हमने डिस्कस कर लिया कि okay, top down macro हो गया, country identify हो गया. We discussed about the AI thing also because we were talking about the AI bubble going on. एंड अभी बॉटम अप पे आते हैं. तो ठीक है, तो एक बार अभी लेट्स से अज्यूमिंग कि इंडिया डिसाइड कर लिया कि इंडिया में इन्वेस्ट करना है इमर्जिंग मार्केट में, अभी आप बॉटम अप स्टॉक पिकिंग कैसे करोगे?
Sure. So let's say we have decided on a country that this is the country we want to invest in. An intermediate step, especially for an emerging market investor, between कि ये country decide कर लिया है और इसमें invest करना है, an intermediate step is कितना invest करना है, right? Which is also an overlooked problem in many cases. So for that we have a template. So what is the size of the country? What is the weight in the MSCI index? Based on that, we decide how much money to put in India. So let's say if we like India, maybe we'll put anywhere between 15 to 20% of our portfolio in India. Its index weight is 10-12% or whatever. Now it's like maybe 12-13%. But if we like, let's say, Indonesia, we are not going to put 20% of the portfolio in Indonesia. We are going to put maybe 5%, 6% of the portfolio in Indonesia. So I think the second question after liking a country is how much do you put in that country? समझो ये decision भी अपना हो गया. Then we screen for liquidity, as I mentioned, कि $1 billion का market cap and $5 million का average daily trading volume. Since we took the Indian example, there are probably 500 such stocks in India जिनका $1 billion का market cap है और $5 million का average daily trading volume. So उसमें से हमने काफी 4000 listed stocks है इंडिया में, अपन 500 पे ऑलरेडी आ गए.
$1 million in
$5 million.
Sorry, $5 million in
average daily trading volume. मतलब उतने का रोज मार्केट में सौदा होता है. This is important from an institutional standpoint because we want to build a certain position in that stock. If you're not able to build that position, it needs a certain liquidity for you to be able to build that position. उसके बाद में, as I said, the first metric that we look for is return on equity. ये कंपनी का historical return on equity क्या है? And what is the expected return on equity? And for expected, we used consensus numbers, जो भी analyst estimate. So in the past, we want to see a median ROE of 15%. ये कंपनी ने 15% ROE past में, let's say even out of the last 7 years, it has made a 15% plus ROE in the last 4 years. Or if you take about last 5 years, 3 साल में तो 15% ROE बनाया है. What does it tell you? It tells you this company has something in it which is allowing it to make returns which are higher, comfortably higher than the cost of capital. Cost of capital is what rate you borrow at in the market, right? So कोई भी investment का आपका least risk comparable is a fixed deposit. कि fixed deposit में बिना कोई risk लिए मेरे को 8% मिल रहा है. Why should I go for 8-10% ROE and assume all this risk? So 15% is a number which is globally a significant signifier of a good quality company which is able to generate this ROE. Then we also do a lot of subsidiary analysis, let's call it that, कि ROE can also come via leverage, right? आप अगर बहुत debt ले लेते हो आपके balance sheet में, आपका ROE ऊपर जाएगा. So you don't want that as your source of ROE, but we digress. I'll talk about that separately. So एक historical ROE होनी चाहिए, and that ROE should not be decaying going forward. जिसका मतलब है कि let's say 15 ROE है, it should not be going like 12, 10, 8 in the future years, which means that some competitive moat of that company is eroding, right? It is sort of going down. So that's the first thing we look for in an ROE. The second thing we look for in an ROE is what we call the ROE inflection. That's why 15% ROE में typically क्या होता है ना, आपको सिर्फ डिस्कवर्ड कंपनीज मिलेंगी, या आपको कंपनीज मिलेंगी इन कंज्यूमर स्टेपल स्पेस, और आपको कंपनी मिलेगी मे बी इन हेल्थ केयर जिसका ROE प्रोफाइल होता है विच इज मोर लाइक 15%, or you may find a utility like an NTPC or something of that sort, which makes that kind of ROE. But what about changes in ROEs, right? A lot of money is made when you are able to catch the upward inflection in an ROE. कि साइकिल चेंज हो रहा है, कुछ तो बदल रहा है. क्लासिक केसेस आर आर फ्रेंड्स SK हाइनिक्स एंड सैमसंग. इनका ROE 2-3% होता था. I mean, there was a year in which these companies made EBITDA losses. I mean, forget ROE. EBITDA negative, and not too far back in the, maybe 3 years ago.
अभी ROE कितना होगा सैमसंग SK?
Must be 20% plus, even more. I mean, the way these profits are growing,
बाप रे.
these ROEs will be through the roof. I mean, कब की ROE पूछ रहे हो? That's मतलब ये quarter की ROE versus will
पिछले
be
quarter
will be
की.
a step change,
Oh, okay.
because that's the kind of profit growth that is happening in these companies. So
Samsung तो crossed $1 trillion in market cap also, no?
Samsung
Like अभी
$1 trillion market cap, but a number that gets quoted is Samsung's profit, right? Samsung's profit this year, 2026, will be about $200 billion, which is more than all of India put together.
Oh, more than all India
Put together.
companies' profits.
Single
My
company.
God.
पर ये number का कोई मतलब नहीं है, right?
Okay.
In the sense that you do not have a $1 trillion market cap company in India. So just comparing profit to profit, and also bear in mind that Samsung is supplying something which is getting globally consumed, right? It is not something which is consumed only in Korea. It is consumed all across the globe. Sorry. So coming back, so we look for a ROE increase and ROE change of about 350 basis points over a 2-year time frame.
Okay, so 3.5% over 2 years.
बढ़ना चाहिए.
बढ़ना चाहिए, correct.
So even if let's say there is a company whose ROE is going from 8 to 12, it is part of our investing universe.
Okay.
So
Even if it is less than 15.
15 नहीं है.
Still.
हाँ.
Okay.
So हमारा पोर्टफोलियो में 2 प्रकार का चीज मिलेगा आपको. एक तो ये स्टेडी वाले मिलेंगे 15% टाइप जो कर रहे हैं, 15% करते रहेंगे. And then there are these turnaround stories, बोलो उनको कुछ भी बोलना है बोलो. There are these inflection points कि 8 ROE is going to 12 ROE, which is a 400 basis points change. We want to see that over 2 years. So we'll compare FY26 with FY28, for instance. Again, consensus numbers लेके करेंगे, and we'll look for inflections. Then we'll go into the reasons for inflections. The reasons for inflection may be just prices, right? Memory prices are through the roof. Commodity company का ROE through the roof हो जाता है, right? If copper goes from 8,000 to 13,000, a copper company will make more ROE than Hindustan Lever, if it is a well-run company, has good costs, etc. So those things you also want to check. ROE changes can also happen if the company, let's say, is going through a large capital expenditure program, which is coming to an end. So जब आप खर्चा कर रहे हो, बड़ा प्लांट लगा रहे हो, तो आपको इंटरेस्ट भरना है, बिकॉज कर्जा लिया है प्लांट लगाने के लिए. आपको डेप्रीसिएशन, आप तो CEO, you know this, that you end up spending interest and depreciation and there is no revenue, which is why आपका प्रॉफिट कम है, तो आपका ROE कम है. बट वंस this starts producing, this plant starts producing, आपका वो revenue बढ़ना शुरू हो जाता है, which starts to show in the change in ROE, right? Because interest और depreciation वही number है, अभी आपका revenue आना शुरू हो गया. So आप your ROE changes. This is a good place to invest. कि companies जिनका capex खत्म होने को आ रहा है, who are done a large capex, they are finishing. So all those kind of companies get captured in our turnaround in ROE sort of a metric. So ये 2 चीज हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. अगर ऐसी कंपनी है जिसका ROE for the last 5 years is 10% and going forward is going to be 8%, we will not spend any time on it. Right? कि नहीं करना है, मतलब उसमें कुछ होगा, maybe that stock will do well, but that's not our area of interest. So ROE पे निकल गए. Then we look for earnings growth. Right? This is the second thing, that we look for at least a 15% earnings growth in the next 2 years.
Profit basically 15% से बढ़ना चाहिए.
PAT growth at least 15% होना चाहिए for the next 2 years, and should have again the same history में गए 7 में से 4 साल में तो 10% profit growth हुआ होना चाहिए. मतलब ये कंपनी को ग्रो करने का आदत है, ये वैल्यू ट्रैप नहीं है या ये क्वालिटी ट्रैप नहीं है. we'll find a lot of companies which have good ROEs but have no profit growth. Right? मतलब growth नहीं हो रहा है for whatever reason, and then there is no investment happening, there's nothing. So the ROE is looking very good, but there is no growth happening. There are some MNCs in India which are like that. जैसे मैंने अगर न्यूज़पेपर कंपनी बताई तो ग्रोथ नहीं है, ROE अच्छी होगी क्योंकि नया केपेक्स भी नहीं हो रहा है, नया कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा है, तो पैसा आ रहा है. So I think we look for growth as a third thing, second thing, and the third thing is valuations. That where is it versus हम एक सिंपल PE बैंड चार्ट बनाते हैं of the company that we are looking at. समझो क्वालिटी पैरामीटर में पास हो गया कि वो आइदर कंपाउंडर है या ROE चेंज हो रहा है. ग्रोथ में पास हो गया कि फॉरवर्ड ग्रोथ है, एंड नाउ व्हाट वैल्यूएशन इज एट ट्रेडिंग एट. एंड वैल्यूएशन इज समथिंग वेयर आइडियली वी वुड वांट टू सी इट एट और बिलो 10-year PE एवरेज. कम मिलता है इंडिया में. दैट इज द पैरामीटर वेयर वी आर द मोस्ट लीनियंट. कि वन स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन भी ऊपर है, मतलब लॉन्ग टर्म पी से थोड़ा ऊपर है, चलेगा. We'll at least analyze it. We'll at least look at it. We'll at least think about it.
So 3 financial metrics if I can summarize. So number 1 is कि ROE should usually be more than 15% and और basically incremental ROE जो है वो 3.5% से ज़्यादा होना चाहिए. That is one. Second is कि आपका earnings growth जो है वो 15% से ज़्यादा होना चाहिए अगले 2 साल के लिए. So year on year profitability growth should be more than 15%. And the third thing that you mentioned is the valuations की P जो है वो 10-year average जो last year 10-year average P है उसके आसपास होना चाहिए, उससे कम होना चाहिए.
तो nothing like it.
कम हुआ तो best है, but उसके आसपास होना चाहिए. Right?
Again, absolutely. And we look for liquidity and we look for market cap.
Yeah.
But for a retail investor, that is not required.
Got it.
Also, ये fool proof नहीं है. ये screener पे कोई भी चला सकता है.
Yeah.
Then you have to roll up your sleeves. The thing you have to focus on is ये 15% ROE क्यों बन रहा है. Right? ये secret sauce क्या है? Secret sauce भी नहीं है. I mean, what is it that's making it, letting it make this superior ROE above 15%? Because conventional economics tells me that if somebody is making a lot of money in a business, somebody else will come in and compete with you and lower that ROE. And conventional one-on-one economics also tells you that अगर आप 5% ROE बना रहे हो तो कोई लॉस मेकिंग आदमी है वो इस धंधे से चला जाएगा और आपका ROE वापस. So ROE और any sort of a return ratio in a way is mean reverting. बहुत ज़्यादा बन रहा है तो कम होता है, बहुत कम बन रहा है तो ज़्यादा होना चाहिए. That is the one-on-one logic, right? पर वो नहीं होता है in real life for multiple reasons. So long story short, you have to think about the sources of this superior ROE. Why are you making better ROE? That जैसे आप कोई भी बैंक ले लो जिसका अच्छा ROE बना है through life, right? It will either have very very good cost of funds. मतलब लोग वो बैंक को बहुत ट्रस्ट करते हैं और अपना पैसा कासा करंट एंड सेविंग अकाउंट में रखते हैं वो बैंक के पास. So which makes its cost of funds very low. Right? Which is why then it can make higher NIMs. Versus समझो कोई नई बैंक है या कोई NBFC है which has to attract those deposits for which it has to pay more. उसका ROE कम बनेगा. Right? So then we say okay, ये ROE का एक main source है that lot of people put their money at very very low interest rate with this bank. Why do they do it? Right? They do it because of the branch network, or they do it because of the trust that they have. They do it because of the services that this bank, whatever. That's where your human analysis will come through. Then you look for sustainability. What will make this remain so for the next 5 years or vice versa? कि will it change? So जो moat की बात करते हैं लोग कि what is the moat in the company? You also think about is the moat shrinking or is the moat shrinking or is it expanding? So जो cost of funds है in relation to its competition, is the gap going up or is the gap coming down? Right? That also gives you a clue. Is the market share of these low cost deposits going up or is going down? So you are now thinking about, you started with 15 ROE. क्यों? उसका एक कारण मिला कि लो कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड्स. क्यों? वो ट्रस्ट है, बेटर क्वालिटी है, सर्विस है, जो भी है. ये बढ़ रहा है कि घट रहा है? ये बढ़ रहा है तो क्यों बढ़ रहा है? क्या स्ट्रेटजीज है? लोग उसको कॉपी क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे हैं? So that's how you are, I'm just giving you one strand of thinking. That's how your thinking starts, right? So what you're trying to think is ये जो आज की ROE है, ये बढ़ने वाली है, घटने वाली है, क्या होने वाला है? And this will probably have 2-3 parameters for this. One will be cost of funds. There could be asset quality. It could be a very efficient asset-light bank. It should be a very people-light bank, so etc. etc. So I think that is where the analysis, the same questions for growth. That when the entire sector is growing 10, why are these guys growing 15? Then you start digging deeper. कि इनका maybe distribution is now expanding. Maybe they have gotten into premium products. maybe their sourcing strategy for raw material is different than somebody else, etc., etc. So each of these will be a different reason, and then if you find these to be sustainable, then it becomes easier. And last thing, जो भी सोचा, जो भी analysis किया, please write it down before you buy the stock. It helps you track it when things go wrong or things go right.
आप बाकी इंडिकेटर्स भी देखते हो ना, जैसे सीवी सेल्स, कमर्शियल व्हीकल सेल्स
Sure.
कितने हो रहे हैं, या तो पोर्ट लोडिंग कितना हो रहा है, क्रेडिट ग्रोथ कितना हो रहा है, वो भी जो हाई फ्रीक्वेंसी मैक्रो इंडिकेटर्स है वो भी स्टडी करते हो, राइट? एंड बेसिस दैट आई थिंक आई वाज स्टडीइंग दैट 2000 टू 2010 आपने बताया था इट वाज ऑल अबाउट एलएनटी, एंड देन
Yes.
2010 टू उसके बाद इट वाज मोर अबाउट एचयूएल, एंड
Absolutely.
कैसे ये दो स्टॉक्स
Switch
ने
हुआ है.
अलग-अलग स्विच हुआ, तो क्या हुआ था एग्जैक्टली?
So one thing which I think even everybody should have a look at it, and now this data is publicly available, that you get a whole host of high frequency indicators every month, right? You get auto sales, two-wheeler मिलता है, passenger vehicle मिलता है, commercial vehicle मिलता है. You get credit growth numbers. You get, let's say the e-way bills. You get port loading. You get whole host of indicators which tell you about the economy. What is the economic reality in the country at that point in time. एक जीडीपी नंबर ना बहुत बड़ा नंबर होता है कि 7% जीडीपी, बट इट डजंट गिव यू लॉट ऑफ कलर. इट डज, मीन इफ यू गो थ्रू द ब्रेकडाउन ऑफ इट, इट ऑल्सो कम्स विद अ लैग. सो जून क्वार्टर का जो जीडीपी ग्रोथ नंबर है एंड इसका सब पार्ट्स है, वो अगस्त एंड में मिलेगा, right? So it comes with a 2-month lag, but the commercial vehicle sales growth number comes with a 2-day lag. So those second of the next month you will get the numbers. So please go through a whole host of these high frequency indicators, which will tell you कि economy में गरम ठंडा क्या है अभी, right? What is growing well? It is not a forecast mechanism, it's a nowcast mechanism कि अभी क्या अच्छा चल रहा है, क्या अच्छा नहीं चल रहा है. एंड डिपेंडिंग ऑन व्हाट इज योर इन्वेस्टिंग स्टाइल, आर यू कॉन्ट्रेरियन इन्वेस्टर? अगर कॉन्ट्रेरियन इन्वेस्टर हो तो जो चीज़ नहीं चल रही है, you try and focus on that कि okay, this will turn at some point in time. और इसको आप बोल रहे हो कि नहीं, this is the commercial vehicle sales have started going up and they will probably go up for the next 2-3 years. So then I want to look at some commercial vehicle stocks, right? So that is how you use these high frequency indicators which come out on a monthly basis to zero in on what sectors you want to spend time. ये आपका quantitative filter तो आप लगा ही रहे हो, but then उसमें भी 100-150 कंपनी आएगी. Where do you want to focus on? The other question which you had asked about lever and was more in the context of how does macro help in deciding the direction of your portfolio, right? So at a macro level, maybe I'll give you the example of the last 5-7 years. The state spending, government ka spending has been more skewed towards infrastructure, right? Have been building roads, bridges, railways, this, that, and the other, and lesser on giving dole schemes. This was true till 2024, 2025. And that is a time when you are saying that, okay, the thrust of the fiscal spend is more towards creating capital expenditure and not towards giving free subsidies or free money to people. So when you are spending, the government is spending more on investments, you buy or you tend to go towards a company like Larsen. And when it is spending more on consumption, you tend to go towards a company like Hindustan Lever, because the government is telling you that that is the thrust of where I want to spend the money. So 2000 to 2010, right, which was the first decade of this millennium, 2003 to 7, there was a lot of capital spending happening in the country. Like how crazy amounts of money was being spent. So it was a lost decade for lever, right? 2000 to 2010, the lever stock went nowhere. Blue chip stock, right? Hindustan Unilever didn't go anywhere. And Larsen probably went up 4-5 times or whatever that number was. You go to the next decade, 2012, maybe 2009 से लेके 2017-18 तक, Larsen went nowhere, and it was lever that did extremely well. And you now look at it from 2018-19 till now, I would think that lever has gone nowhere, and Larsen has done really well. So this is how you think about the macro and then start getting into the company.
तो 2026 में अगर मैं पूछूं, वी आर सिटिंग इन जुलाई 2026, तो अभी क्या आपको लग रहा है कि क्या ट्रेंड्स चल रहे हैं, वेयर यू थिंक कि हाँ यहाँ से ये सेक्टर या ये ट्रेंड गवर्नमेंट स्पेंड कर रही है जिसकी वजह से इम्प्रूवमेंट हो सकती है?
Yeah, so I think fiscally what is happening is that the amount of capital expenditure which was happening in the past, the quantum of increase which was happening, is no longer happening at the same pace as it was maybe from 2020 till 2024. But still the number is large and is still growing double digits. The orientation of that capex has changed. Not so much is going to roads and railways now, more is going towards defense. Probably more is going towards even shipping. So the priorities of where the government is spending money is changing a bit away from, in terms of growth, from roads, railways, more towards defense, more towards these things. So it tells you that, okay, now you need to reorient away, even within the investments theme, to other sectors versus what you were doing maybe in the past 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
A bit of consumption related spending has crept in over the past 2 odd years, which was extremely tight for maybe from 2019 till 2024. And there is an electoral cycle which plays a role in this, right? That you need to sort of give out a few doles to win elections. That has kind of started in 2024. So the pendulum, which had completely swung towards capital spending, has come back slightly in the middle, is what I would say. But I don't think still big enough to reorient their portfolio completely towards consumption. So what happened in 2009 was probably exceptional in terms of a large stimulus which was given in the aftermath of the great financial crisis, which helped a lot of consumer companies lift up
Got it.
their earnings. So I would position it that way. Within consumption, I think India's staples consumption journey is done. By staples, I mean til sabun, the soaps, the shampoos, the basic जो consumption होता है. I think that penetration level is almost there. It's very hard for these companies now to grow fast. You will now have to think more about the slightly aspirational consumption. These stocks are very expensive, but you will have to do your stock picking there. That it is now more about the aspirational consumption, K-shaped recovery.
Yeah, plus premiumization also. I think it's
Premiumization
picking
is
up.
absolutely is absolutely happening. Which is again the question that I'm going to ask some of your colleagues in your office is, show me two things. Where do you spend your time on the phone? I want to know your. अगर मैं इनके फोन का पाई चार्ट बना पाऊँ कि डोंट टेल देम दैट ऑफ द 12 आवर्स वो कहाँ स्प्लिट हुआ कि व्हाट्सएप पे कितना गया, इस पे कितना गया, इस पे उस पे कितना, कौन से ऐप में हो, क्या करो, क्या शॉपिंग, क्या नहीं. एंड इफ आई कैन गेट अ सेंस ऑफ देयर वॉलेट स्पेंड का एक पाई चार्ट अगर मैं इनका बना पाऊँ सबका, आई थिंक माई विजिट इज डन. So I think you have to be very close to your end consumer as an investor. So as an investor, when you'll be surprised, I bought a Labubu.
You bought a what?
You know a Labubu?
नहीं, क्या
Labubu
होता है?
Popmart करके एक कंपनी है चीन में. They made these dolls, very, I can say this, very ugly looking dolls. उसको Labubu बोलते थे. Price crazy.
Ugly looking.
Ugly, एकदम बेकार. मतलब if you ask me from the eyes of a 47-year-old, they were terrible. But there was such a craze that Popmart had a meteoric rise on the stock market, and its owner became a massive billionaire. I think he joined the top 10 billionaires list in China because there was this entire craze about these Labubu dolls in terms of buying those Labubu dolls and having, there are different colors, this, that, and the other. So there is one way, जो एक uncle way of responding to that, ये बच्चे कुछ भी करते रहते हैं, right? So this is one way. You can dismiss this saying that अरे क्या है, इसका तुमने इतना पैसा दे दिया. It's a very standard dad line in any household. But as an investor, I think you have to keep your personal biases behind. मैं नहीं खरीदूंगा कभी. But I invest in this market. I want to know कि, so I went to a Popmart store. वहाँ पे 2-4 लोगों से बात किया कि क्या है क्या नहीं है. So then I realized that there is some sort of a gamification there. That the Labubu has a color. तो अगर वो color है तो it signifies something. Then there is a very rare color that you get. That if you get that rare color, then there is probably a secondary market for it. You can buy, sell that thing.
What are you saying?
It has also become a bit of a competitive thing. It's like carrying those. I don't want to name the name, but those famous mugs that a lot of people carry. जिसमें से पानी पीते हैं and all those things. So I think you can have your personal bias on multiple things, but I think if you're an investor,
should remove
never
them.
shed your curiosity. कितना भी प्राइमा फेसी आपको लगे क्या चल रहा है, I don't understand this.
But कौन सी target audience खरीदती है Labubu dolls जो आपने बताया?
18-year-olds,
अच्छा.
16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. Maybe you look it up later. I mean, that sort of has come off now, but for 1.5-2 years, it was a massive thing. Owning, and you can hang it up on your backpack. वो backpack में आप एक छोटा सा, it's not a full size Barbie doll. It's like a keychain kind of a thing. You can hang it to your, which is again, when I went to China, for instance, and I've been to China now, I think 2 times in the last 6 months. Everybody has some sort of a doll or a mannequin or some sort of a mascot or a spirit animal hanging from their office bags or hanging from their 2-3-4 चीज लटक रही होंगी. And this is not just young people. This is not just 16, 18, 20-year-olds. I mean, people like you and me, not so much you, you are much younger. People like me, office goers, late 40s,
Both of us are young only.
I will never think of hanging a doll to my office bag, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's like,
Yeah, I won't.
क्या उम्र है तुम्हारी? But I have seen people who are routinely doing it, and I asked them what is it. So he said it's a spirit animal. So owl is my spirit animal. Oda is my spirit animal, and I have bought it, and I have 6 of these, and I keep changing them, and whatever it is. And this is a institutional investor working at a large firm. He's Chinese. So a man who we would think is extremely steeped in logic and very cold-hearted Excel spreadsheet numbers वाला आदमी है. उसने एक tortoise लगाया है अपने बैग पे.
अच्छा.
So we don't get it, right? And I think this is one of the advantages of investing across different markets, that you stop judging, you stop judging, you start understanding कि क्यों है, क्या है, what is the underlying logic, what is it that what you are doing. So for instance, if somebody comes to India and you'll see people wearing different stones on their fingers, that person is going to be surprised कि ये क्या है? I mean, why have you spent, let's say, 50,000 lakh rupees on a certain stone? This is a stone of X, this is a stone of Y, stone of Z. So that person would be justified in saying, "Ye what stupidity is this? What do you mean by this stone is going to bring me prosperity?" Right? It just sounds, for somebody who's not steeped in your culture, who doesn't realize this.
Yeah.
It's probably the same thing on the other side, right? You're not a spirit animal. क्या होता है? तुमको ये क्या spirit animal का doll लगा दिया? But you have to immerse yourself to understand.
तो आपने किया था invest ये?
No, I did not, because I understood it, but I didn't understand it well enough
Okay.
to say that I'll be able to time the ins and outs of it.
But those stocks have done well?
Have done well and have since corrected also.
Achha, okay.
But there was this extreme frenzy of buying those stocks. So
Got it.
I also sometimes find people of my age who are deep into gaming. I mean, they'll spend entire nights playing multi-sport. I had a friend of mine, we were waiting at a lounge at an airport, and he was playing on a handheld which was connected to his house TV. So it was actually happening on his TV, and he was playing it with a mirror screen. And so there's a deep commitment to that. I won't understand it. I've always been an outdoor games person. But I was very curious. I have asked questions about, don't you get bored playing the same game? So the answer there was that no, this game changes every time because it is multiplayer. It's like playing tennis. It's the same inherent game in terms of the rules are the same, but every time there's a new opponent, every time there's a new strategy, every time there's a new thing. So it's as if I'm playing the same game, but I'm not playing the same
नहीं
game.
मतलब मैं समझा नहीं. तो क्या वो हैंडल डिवाइस है जो टीवी से कनेक्टेड है?
टीवी से connected
And
है.
वो बेसिकली क्या एक ऐसे हार्डवेयर है, टैब
It's
जैसा
like,
कुछ है?
think of it like a handheld PlayStation, or think of it like a
अच्छा, okay.
handheld thing. जहाँ पे बीच में एक screen है, दोनों side पे there are
हाँ.
controls, and it is linked, not with a wire, it is linked wirelessly. So the gaming console is at his house. He's not carrying the console with
समझ
him,
गया.
but he's asked somebody at his house to switch on the console,
Okay.
and he's playing it remotely.
कौन सी कंपनी है ये?
I think it will be between Nintendo, Switch. I don't know. I mean, I'm no expert on
Yeah,
this. But are you a gamer? So
नहीं, I'm not. But I'm just curious because मैंने नहीं देखा है कोई हैंडल डिवाइस. Like I just know PlayStation and all these.
so
companies.
that you are playing सामने
Yeah,
सामने.
yeah.
You are playing an Xbox or a PlayStation
Yeah.
सामने सामने. But I think I saw this guy, just interviewed him saying कि भैया क्या कर क्या रहे हो तुम?
Yeah.
I met him at an airport lounge and
Very interesting. ये सारे trends बहुत मतलब I think you learn a lot by observing.
no, observing and being curious. I think where we
Yeah.
started this conversation, right? That I mean, I think, and I'm sure it's true about you, that in an average day you get 5 whys.
Correct.
कि ये why? So why are studios cold, for instance, right? मेरे को एक broad reason मालूम है कि कुछ equipment होता है जो ठंडा रहना है.
Correct.
That is important.
Temperature बढ़ा हो क्या?
नहीं, I'm kidding. So this,
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
yeah. So why? So maybe I want to know better answers, and I think nothing like a LLM out there to, and LLM won't judge you, right? You can ask any why.
Yeah.
So I think for an investor, not stifling any of the whys is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. तो observing की बात कर रहे तो I think vipassana is one of the things which
Oh,
comes
yes.
क्योंकि you learn to observe, and vipassana का meaning ही like vipassana comes from this vipasya to observe.
That's
So let's talk about your sabbatical journey, and इसमें I know we won't be able to spend time on every sabbatical that
Sure.
you've done, but ये बहुत interesting है because you're the first guest I'm interviewing today जिन्होंने investing तो ठीक है, you're a phenomenal investor and you've proven that from your successful journey, but इसके अलावा भी आपने इतने कुछ चीजें की है which I was very fascinated about, and I wanted to have a conversation on that that as well. So we spoke about investing, bottom up हो गया,
Yes.
top down हो गया. Now let's spend some time on sabbaticals.
Excellent. Yeah.
मैं ऑडियंस को सिर्फ बता देता हूँ कि आपने sabbatical में क्या-क्या किया है, and then एक या दो sabbaticals पे डिस्कस
Sure,
करेंगे कि
sure,
आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस था. So पहले मंथ में आई थिंक विपश्यना आपने किया था, म्यांमार में आप गए थे. So that
Into
was
Burma, yeah.
that was basically in Burma, and जहाँ पर से मेन जो विपश्यना का सोर्स था, like SN गोयनका जी, उन्होंने वहाँ से सीखा था. And you went and did vipassana there. I have done vipassana from Igatpuri, and मैंने भी किया हुआ है, and I think that was something which was very very helpful and
Yes.
very very phenomenal.
Yes.
फिर उसके पहले आपने आई थिंक एक टाइम बिलियनेयर का एक कॉन्सेप्ट जो है
हाँ,
वो
so that-
आपको बेसिकली करना
Yeah.
था.
So I read about this concept of a time billionaire.
Hmm.
Maybe I've written about it extensively, but maybe in a couple of sentences I will explain. So normally you understand a billionaire to be somebody who has a large amount of money,
Hmm.
right? But what about if you think about the same thing on the time axis? That here is somebody who has so much time that nobody else has any claim on that person's time, right? So can you work towards becoming a time billionaire rather than becoming a money billionaire? Ki let me get my personal finances and my personal life in such a shape that I can at least have a year where nobody has any claim on my time, including my employer, including my family, nobody. Can I get my entire life to this position rather than saying कि मुझे 100 करोड़ का नेटवर्थ बनाना है, which seems to be the obsession of most people. I had this obsession of can I become the master of my own time, even for a short period of time. I started working towards that, and I reached that place at the age of 40. So 40 is the age of self-realization है जो भी है, where you're sort of most of your responsibilities, if you have done well, if most of your responsibilities are taken care of, and you have a reasonable assurance about your future. So I said, okay, I am a time billionaire right now in the sense that if for the next 12 months, if I don't get any salary, if I have no source of income, and I decide to spend that time exactly the way I want to, I can afford to do it. मेरा दाल चावल चलता रहेगा. And my wife, I don't have kids, so my wife is also of the same thought process that she's like, दाल चावल है बस, let's go. So that is when I decided to do this. So it did not come from a place of boredom. It did not come from a place of frustration कि investing करके थक गया हूँ. I mean, as you can make out, I joined back in 2021 and I still feel equally, if not more passionately about investing, because I think this is one of the very few places that feeds your curiosity, that lets the student inside you remain a student for your entire life. But that was the sabbatical motivation that I want to do. And I had interest in a lot of other things apart from investing. So sometimes, as I mentioned to you earlier as well, that we get defined in a single axis sometimes, right? We get defined monochromatically. Kushal is a podcaster, but Kushal might be multiple other things. I mean, we don't know it. I mean, his most public persona is of that of a podcaster, but Kushal might be an extremely good sitar player, which he's probably not been able to spend a lot of time doing training thinking of, right? So I think as humans, we are multidimensional. We are not unidimensional people. And I wanted to explore some of the other dimensions of me apart from being a investor. And जो बचपन में in an Indian education system आपको time नहीं मिलता है, because you're just, I mean, you know this. एक एग्जाम के बाद आप दूसरी एग्जाम करते हैं, right? 10वीं 12वीं बीकॉम सीए जॉब, तो there is no time to, and then you get married, you start EMIs, फिर और you get never time to explore. जैसे I've never been coached in cricket. मैं खेला हूँ. I've played for my school, I've played for my college, I've played for corporate, but nobody has sat down and said that, hey, your bat is not coming down correctly. थोड़ा बाहर से थोड़ा अंदर लो. I wanted that. I mean, I wanted to get coached and spend dedicated time, right? So you say, hobby में क्या होता है? Investing is your main priority. तो weekend पे थोड़ा खेल लेते, which is not bad. Which is a good thing. But I wanted to put it on top that my first thing for the next 30 days is going to be to land a perfect leg break. Shane Warne idol था, तो want to land it perfectly. वो करना है. So that is how the idea of sabbatical.
तो आपने बेसिकली हर एक जो भी आपने चीजें की है, तो आपने योगा किया, एक डांसिंग मन था जहाँ पर आपने डांस किया एंड वो आपने यूट्यूब पे वीडियो डाला, या फिर एक कुकिंग मन था जो बेसिकली आपने कुकिंग सीखा, क्रिकेट मन था जहाँ पर आप बेसिकली केप टाउन गए एंड देन वहां से आपने क्रिकेट सीखा, गैरी कर्स्टन क्रिकेट एकेडमी व्हिच इज लाइक द वर्ल्ड्स बेस्ट. उसके अलावा आपने योगा भी किया एंड देन उसके अलावा आई थिंक आपने और क्या, इसके अलावा आई थिंक
I did a month of fiction writing.
हाँ, fiction writing ऋषिकेश में जाके आपने आई थिंक राइटिंग भी किया.
My teacher was in New York.
करेक्ट. सो आपका बेसिकली ये फ्रेमवर्क था कि जो भी करना है आपको एक बेस्ट लर्नर या बेस्ट गुरु होना चाहिए, उससे सीखना, एंड देन आपने एक महीना सब कुछ किया. इज इट ट्रू?
यस. सो द ओरिजिनल आइडिया वाज, आई हैड कॉल्ड इट प्रोजेक्ट 12 into 12 कि 12 महीना है, 12 चीजें हैं जो करनी है. उसका एक सिंपल टेम्पलेट रखेंगे. विल फाइंड अ गुरु, विल फाइंड अ गुड पर्सन हु कैन टीच यू दिस वेल, एंड एट द एंड ऑफ 1 month you will do something which will showcase what you have learned in the past 30 days.
Which was the most interesting out of all these that I mentioned? I forgot to mention one thing. आपने fitness and CAT exam वो
दोनों
भी
साथ
एक
में
month
दिया
था,
मैं,
दोनों
हाँ.
साथ में गया. तो आपने CAT exam वापस दिया.
Yes. So I'd taken the CAT in 2022. Sorry,
2002.
correct.
Yeah.
I'd taken the CAT in 2002 after CA. जिसके बाद I went to IIM Ahmedabad, and then I took it again in 2020.
अच्छा, okay.
Not for getting into any MBA, but just to see कि so it came again from a thought that fitness is generally defined as only for the body, but fitness is mind and body.
Yeah. तो सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग कौन सा था? ये सारे सबैटिकल जो मैंने बोले, सबसे एक या दो सबसे मजा आया आपको, कौन सा था?
I would say yoga,
Okay.
because yoga was ashram life. I went to an
Hmm.
ashram in Madurai. It was the Sivananda Meenakshi ashram. And then you are not prepared for ashram life, right? If you have led a reasonably comfortable urban life, you're not prepared to live an ashram life. So that adjustment was massive. I think it was a huge change in my daily routine. So only 2 meals a day, only vegetarian. I dropped 7 kilos in 1 month.
7 kgs in one month.
Yeah, yeah.
How come?
Because you're eating only twice and you're only eating sattvic food. The biggest indulgence, right? People are ready to kill each other was for a piece of papad, because that was sort of the only थोड़ा खाने में जो मजा आ रहा है ऐसा only thing was papad. Otherwise it was curd rice, it was dal rice, it was all those kind of things. So papad became a currency कि अगर तू मेरे लिए ये कर देगा मैं तेरे को एक मेरा पापड़ मैं तेरे को दे देगा. So it was like back to hostel days. So
तो आपने क्या पापड़ भी क्विट कर दिया था तभी?
नहीं, मैं पापड़ खाता था. एक
अच्छा.
पापड़ मिलता था.
अच्छा, एक
हाँ,
पापड़.
एक पापड़ मिलता था, which was sort of your.
Okay. That was the only thing which you liked eating. मतलब वही एक tasty था.
I liked eating everything.
But sattvic food is like usually.
Sattvic food is not, it's bland, it's
Yeah,
not very spicy.
correct.
It was generally rice based. So the adjustment was massive, right?
Mm.
I mean, in terms of I'm cleaning my own room, I'm cleaning my own toilet. There is no sort of room service. ये सब कुछ नहीं है.
Wow.
So it was a real proper ashram life. And it was very regimented. So it's to start at 6 a.m. It was almost like US Navy SEAL kind of
कब
a
किया
training.
आपने? कौन से ईयर में?
2020.
अच्छा, so after you quit Morgan Stanley,
After I
उसके
took a
बाद
break.
आपने किया?
But no,
अच्छा,
if I took
okay.
a break at Morgan Stanley, it was a sabbatical, right?
So how was it? Ex-MD of Morgan Stanley India sweeping floors. How was the
but
feeling?
the good part was that nobody around me knew who I
Yeah,
was,
correct.
and vice versa. I didn't know.
But so inspiring.
Yeah, so there was one lady who was a top-notch corporate lawyer,
Hmm.
which I found out later.
अच्छा.
I mean, she used to bill probably my salary on a daily basis. So I didn't realize that. But it was equating, right? I mean, as I said, right, sometimes our work and our organizations define who we are.
Yeah.
And that was an experience where you completely shed that identity. कोई नहीं, कौन Morgan Stanley? Nobody knows what Morgan Stanley is. Nobody knows manager. Everybody, somebody's a yoga teacher, somebody's a somebody's a lawyer. So I think that leveling was very, very helpful. I mean, that was in the moment it felt very challenging. कि भाई ये क्या है? I mean, did I do all this in my life to sweep floors? It's a thought that crossed my mind multiple times. But I said, no, we are here for a purpose, and if this is the process to attain that purpose, let's go through that process with as much shiddat as possible.
आप योगा भी पढ़ाते हो ना?
I can. I mean,
You
so
can
at the,
teach
if
yoga
you
also.
successfully complete the course, you get a certificate called as a teacher training certification course, which is given by the World Yoga Alliance, which allows you or which lets you teach yoga anywhere in the world. So, for instance, India में there is certification नहीं है. कोई भी योगा आपको सिखा सकता है. मतलब nothing wrong with it. But if you go to some of the other countries, especially in Europe, etc., you need to have some sort of a certification to be able to take a yoga class. So I have that certification. I have not taught anybody because I don't think I mean, you need to practice at a different level and at a different scale to be able to teach well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to risk it with my level, because I'm not able to dedicate enough time now to deepening that so much. So yoga was fantastic. So at the end of 1 month, I mean, I could hold a headstand for like 2 minutes. And some of those things were very, very good. And as I said, right, where did you reach at the end of those 30 days? I think the result was amazing. It was a really good.
ठीक है. So most interesting was yoga, you said, and
most
सबसे
challenging.
difficult कौन सा था? सबसे
Difficult was cooking, I thought.
अच्छा, okay.
So the idea was I trained with 2 very popular chefs, and the idea was at the end of it, I will call 12 friends and I'll serve them a meal, which I have made on my own with some help from a helper. Yeah, so ये journey मैंने शुरू किया था at a point where मुझे सिर्फ चाय बनानी आती है, मैगी बनानी आती है, and I can पापड़ रोस्ट कर सकता हूँ. इतना ही मुझे आता है. वहाँ से आई एम गोइंग टू सर्व एटलीस्ट 3 कोर्स मील टू मेरे 15 दोस्त या 12 दोस्त। तो ये 30 डे का मेरा जर्नी था। सो कुकिंग में लॉट ऑफ पीपल, एंड आई डोंट नो इफ यू कुक, बट इफ यू गो होम, जो लोग हैं ना उनको एक इंट्यूशन होता है कुकिंग का कि वो नमक बिना मेजर किए डाल सकते हैं। हैव यू डन इट फॉर सो लॉन्ग कि कितना पानी लेना है, कितना ये करना है, ये सब यू कैन डू इट आउट ऑफ इंट्यूशन। मुझे वो इंट्यूशन नहीं है क्योंकि मैंने वो किया नहीं। दैट्स व्हाई समबडी गिव्स मी अ रेसिपी, आई हैव टू रीड दैट रेसिपी एंड द इंस्ट्रक्शंस हैव टू बी वेरी प्रिसाइज। तो उसमें एक फनी चीज़ हो गया था कि आई वाज ट्राइंग टू मेक अ नूडल डिश। तो बोला कि नूडल क्लीन कर लो इन वाटर एंड put the noodle in the freezer because you want them ice noodles जिसको बोलते हैं, put them in the freezer so that they become nowhere in the recipe and rightly so was it written कि drain the water, right? तो मैंने नूडल पानी के साथ डाल दिया अंदर, तो वो बर्फ बन के बाहर आया। सो जब when the chef came and she said okay चलो नूडल I hope you frozen, हाँ हाँ। मैंने ये लोग ये क्या है? सो अब नूडल बोलते ये क्या है? आई मीन यू हैव टू ड्रेन द वाटर, सो ओनली द नूडल्स दैट नीड टू गो इनटू द फ्रीजर। I said ये लिखा नहीं था एंड जस्ट शी लुक्ड एट मी लाइक व्हाट काइंड ऑफ एन इडियट आई एम डीलिंग विथ हियर। सो कुकिंग में वो चैलेंज मेरा वो था, एंड आई एम एन एक्सट्रीमली स्लो कुक। क्योंकि वो रेसिपी पढ़ के ना आई नीड टू डू 2 थिंग्स। फर्स्ट आई नीड टू लुक एट द रेसिपी, देन आई नीड टू हैव एवरीथिंग इन माय विजन कि सामने सब इंग्रेडिएंट्स जो है वो सामने होने चाहिए। आई वांट द किचन क्लियर्ड, वो सब मेरा जो यूटेंसिल्स जो बर्तन यूज करने वाला हूँ वो सब साथ में चाहिए। सो आई नीड ऑल दैट इन प्लेस फर्स्ट बिफोर आई इवन स्विच ऑन द गैस। सो इसीलिए घर पे मेरे को अभी डिस्करेज करते हैं कि बोलते हैं कि ये लंच बनाने जाएगा, ये डिनर तक नहीं बनेगा। देन व्हाट आई एंड अप डूइंग इज समटाइम्स व्हेन फ्रेंड्स कम ओवर, मैं एक डिश बना लूंगा। आई मेक अ डेजर्ट।
मेरे को लगा आप बोल रहे हो समटाइम व्हेन फ्रेंड्स कम ओवर दे डोंट ईट एट माय प्लेस।
No, so I am grateful to those 12 people who came and ate. They are my dear friends. But that was very so cooking is one skill, right? जो बहुत taken for granted है, right? कि घर पे especially in the Indian context we are used to कि हाँ कोई तो खाना। I have new respect for people who cook. I have terrific respect for people who cook well, plate it well, serve it well, because I know now that what it takes, and it is very hard. So it is seems easy यार, क्या हाँ चलना 2 चीज डिश बनाए, क्या है, what's the big deal? It was hard for me. It was really hard for me.
आपका वो भी एक स्टोरी ना वो पीस का
हाँ, the green peas.
हाँ ग्रीन पीस क्या था वो?
So the blanching of green peas होता है, right? So the green peas need to look really green, right? If you are putting them कि पुलाव में डाल रहे हैं ना, तो अगर वो पीस समझो थोड़े से ऑफ कलर हैं, तो अच्छे नहीं दिखते। Then you are thinking of this more from a presentation standpoint, from plating, because मैं सीख रहा था शेफ से। So peas लेके उनको ब्लांच करना होता है, that you put them in hot water, then put them in cold water, then they start looking much more fuller and much more greener. The same peas, उसमें कुछ तो ये रेसिपी में नहीं लिखा था। तो मैंने बोला ये हम कर क्या रहे हैं? सो उन्होंने बोला दिस इज कॉल्ड ब्लांचिंग, इससे ये होता है। एंड आई वाज लाइक कि क्यों ये तामझाम, खाना ही है ना। सो आई अंडरस्टूड दैट फूड, एंड दैट्स व्हाट माय टीचर सेड एट दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम, दैट द फूड इज टू बी एंजॉयड बाय ऑल योर सेंसेस। द फूड इज नॉट टू बी एंजॉयड जस्ट बाय योर टेस्ट, बट वो दिखना भी अच्छा चाहिए खाना, राइट? इट शुड हैव अ गुड अरोमा एज वेल. And for that, you need to ensure that it comes out looking really appetizing. And for that, we are doing this. And she was irritated. वो मुझे बोले कि यही करना था तो थाली खिलाओ लोगों को, थाली रेस्टोरेंट में लेके जाके. You want to learn how to cook a proper cuisine. So you have to do this. So had these, अगर ये मटर, had this been the way I wanted them to look, we wouldn't have done this. But they are not looking the way I want. That's why we are doing this. So that was sort of a learning.
Yeah, very interesting. And like the best part about it is that despite you coming from like such a big stature and having such a great corporate journey, आपने सोचा like चलो learn करते कुछ from experts, and like putting your ego aside and learning, like because you don't know like these things, and even if let's say they are scolding you and all, I'm sure like वो होता होगा and you wouldn't feel bad because you're learning for that.
Yeah,
so that's something which is very inspiring.
I feel that if you have decided to become a student, you have to surrender.
Correct. आपका चाइल्डहुड ड्रीम था ना, राइटर बनना था आपको, एंड देन आपने फिर ये ऋषिकेश जाके आपने लिखा चीज,
राइट? आई स्टिल राइट एन ओकेजनल op-ed इन अ न्यूज़पेपर. That's the only writing. So childhood में भी मेरा जब 10वीं हुआ 94 में, तब 3 ही ऑप्शन होते थे, आर्ट, साइंस, कॉमर्स। उसमें कुछ नया तीसरा, चौथा, पाँचवा
Yeah.
कुछ नहीं था। आई वाज़ वेरी क्लियर मुझे साइंस नहीं करना है, मुझे बायोलॉजी ज़रा भी पसंद नहीं थी। देन देयर वाज़ नो वे ऑफ आई यूज्ड टू लाइक मैथ, बट मुझे बायोलॉजी ज़रा भी पसंद नहीं, बिकॉज़ आई कुडन्ट ड्रॉ दोज़ थिंग्स। वो विसेरा ऑफ अ फ्रॉग वगैरह जो होता है ना, वो फ्रॉग का क्रॉस सेक्शन, so I drew it. It was bigger than an actual frog, right? I mean, he was like कि ये क्या बनाया है, कि this is supposed to be at a certain size. And biology was a struggle, completely struggle, complete struggle. So I said नहीं करूँगा. I told my parents arts करना है मुझे, because I like to write English. मैं journalist बनूँगा आगे जाके। Very middle class 90s parental answer that क्या करेगा, झोला लगाएगा जर्नलिस्ट बन के, पैसे कैसे कमाएगा, how are you going to so he said नहीं नहीं ये नहीं, and you are a bright student, you have marks and all that, and why are you going to arts? So hierarchy एकदम clear था, science, commerce, arts. Arts was for people who have not scored good marks, they go to arts. People who have scored great marks go to science. So I said okay, science मुझे करना नहीं है, arts मुझे आप करने नहीं दोगे, तो by exclusion हम commerce पे आ गए कि ना तेरा ना मेरा, तो चलो। So that's how commerce, I mean that was not my 16 साल की उम्र में क्या मालूम होता है, बट 16 साल की उम्र में इफ यू हैड आस्क्ड मी क्या अच्छा लगता है, राइटिंग अच्छा लगता है। राइटिंग का क्या प्रोफेशन बन सकता है, आइदर बिकम अ राइटर और अ जर्नलिस्ट। मैं जर्नलिस्ट बनूँ, नहीं बन पाया, मतलब अभी बन पाया हूँ इन अ सॉर्ट ऑफ अ माइनर वे, बट दैट इज हाउ कॉमर्स गॉट सिलेक्टेड, एंड दैट्स हाउ देन सीए हैपेंड, एंड देन
Yeah.
द अदर थिंग्स।
वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। एंड आपको लगता है सबैटिकल के थ्रू आपने जितने भी चीज़ें एक्टिविटीज़ की, डू यू थिंक कि कहीं न कहीं इसके थ्रू आप एक बेटर इन्वेस्टर बने, या कैसे ना कैसे हेल्प हुआ आपको आपके इन्वेस्टिंग करियर में?
इट्स अ गुड क्वेश्चन। सो आई थिंक मोस्ट टैंजिबली आई फील आई एम अ बेटर राइटर नाउ, राइट? बिकॉज़ राइटिंग फिक्शन, writing with a coach, and she's a published Penguin author.
अच्छा।
So Manjula Padmanabhan,
Hmm.
so she's very good. She just cleaned up my writing, right? Ki as Indians, and not in Indians but in general, we have a tendency to use too many adjectives and adverbs when you are writing something. And she was merciless with that. Ki write clean, write tight. Right? Don't use too many unless absolutely necessary. So, and I think communicating is a very important part of investing. To be able to write your thoughts down, not for the world but for yourself, I think is important. Usme you don't have to write like Hemingway. You have to write well, but you have to be able to communicate effectively. जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ वो it should come out to you very quickly, crisply, and without wasting too much bandwidth. So I think that helped there. I think the other thing which I would say is what I briefly mentioned earlier, that there are multiple viewpoints, belief systems in the world, and all of them are valid. It's not me versus somebody. What I'm doing is right. I think it opened me up, having met very different kinds of people through those 12 months, right? Given what we do, we tend to get locked in an echo chamber. कि आपके मेरे दोस्त ना broadly same background से हैं, जो आप background से हैं, who broadly talk about the same things. But when I went to, for instance, yoga ashram, like absolutely diverse set of people got exposed to diverse points of view in life. So I think having an open mind, that they just got reinforced. Maybe before the sabbatical, I wouldn't have done so much labubu research. But
Yeah.
after the sabbatical, it taught me, nahi, hai kuch. Let's not just dismiss this upfront.
Right. Very interesting. Wow. What a power-packed, insightful session. But thank you so much for doing this. बहुत ही मजा आया. Last question that I ask all my guests, it's a tricky one. If you were in the shoes of Kushal Lodha and if you were interviewing Mr. Swanand Kelkar, what is one question you would like to ask him towards the end?
Wow. No, I didn't think of it. The one question that I would like to be asked, and since given the objective of your show is what you would tell a 27-year-old Swanand. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
question that
That's a good one. So, आप
that's,
क्या बोलना चाहोगे to a 27-year-old Swanand Kelkar?
I think, keep the curiosity alive. I mean, I think we have talked about this a lot, but I would think this is very important. That I like this line that there are no stupid questions. There are only unasked questions.
Yeah.
So I think if you keep your curiosity alive, I think that is amazing. I would say don't try to conform. Conform मतलब एक भीड़ की तरह, मतलब जो सब लोग कर रहे हैं वो conform जो होता है कि I want to be like that person. Because what makes you different is what's going to probably make you successful as well. If you are trying too hard to conform, because if you are trying to a new environment, corporate environment, you are trying to be like everybody else. ये दूसरी चीज बोलूंगा. एंड तीसरी चीज बोलूंगा कि क्वेश्चन ऑल कन्वेंशनल विजडम. इन द सेंस, अगर आपको बोला जाता है कि एक 5 ROE वाला स्टॉक नहीं लेना चाहिए, तो पूछो वो आदमी से कि क्यों नहीं लेना चाहिए, क्या प्रॉब्लम. सो एवरी कन्वेंशनल विजडम, you have the position, you have the place as a young person to question every conventional wisdom, especially when it comes to investing. So karo.
Very, very interesting. I think asking questions, I think that's the most important advice, which if I can summarize. But thank you so much for doing this. बहुत मजा आया आपसे बात करके. I think we've spoken on so many topics, right? From macro, top-down investing, countries के बारे में, bottom-up stock picking, your examples of investing in Cholamandalam, etc. And finally, to your sabbatical, which is the most inspiring part as well, कि आपने इतना एक sabbatical लेके इतनी चीजें की, diverse range. I think it's definitely inspired me also to like think outside my work and कैसे मैं भी pursue कर सकता हूँ other passion. And I'm sure everyone who's watching this has learned a lot, not only about investing, but also about life lessons and principles. Thank you so much once again for doing this. Worth the time, and didn't realize कि we spent 2.5 hours doing this. I didn't realize at all. So thank you so much once again, and wish you the best for all your future endeavors.
Thank you, Kushal. This was amazing. This was one of the most comprehensive chats that I have ever had in this format.
Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. Before we end this video, I'd like to thank Grow for being our title sponsor. With support like this, we can deliver actionable finance content to our audience. So go ahead and download the Grow app today and tell us in the comment section which guest you want so that we can invite them. Also, ऐसे कौन से questions है जो मैंने पूछने चाहिए थे, कौन से questions है जो मैंने नहीं पूछने चाहिए थे, ऐसे कौन से parts है आपको लगता है trim करने चाहिए थे, हमें comment section में बता देना ताकि we can give you the most value additive content. Thank you so much once again for watching this entire podcast, and stay tuned for more amazing episodes of Konversation with Kushal.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.